Previously on the Vampire Diaries.
You must be Elena.
Did you miss me? Hey, what's up you guys? It's me, Luke, and welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel, and welcome back to another installment in my series deep diving and recapping the Vampire Diaries. You guys, I am so excited to finally be back. I know that my break between season 1 and this video was a little bit long, but we're back, and I'm so excited. I've been working on this video for a while in the background of things, and to be able to stand here right now and film it just feels so freaking good, because the first series was so much fun. And you guys loved it, I loved it, so I'm excited to be back. But if you have not watched the first series, basically what we're doing over here is recapping the plot of the Vampire Diaries, but also doing a deep dive into the characters, their relationships, mythology, plot holes, lots of different things. I've been watching the Vampire Diaries since it first aired in 2009. I do a yearly rewatch every year, and this year was a bit different because I decided that I wanted to make a video series on it. So I already have 3 videos out, which is on season 1, so go check those out first. I'll link it down below. And today we're getting into season 2, which is arguably my favorite season. Now, season 3 is a close second. I just feel like there is kind of a bias towards season 2 and why I love it so much, but we'll get into that. Just a quick note to pop in and let you know that I didn't have my microphone on the right setting for like the first couple minutes of this video, but I do resolve it fairly quickly, so please hang in with me. It gets much better. First of all, this YouTube series of mine is inspired by YouTube legends Jenny Nicholson and Mike's Mike, so full creds to them. As you can see, the mind map looks different from the last videos. It has gotten a lot bigger because there are a lot more characters in season 2. I actually had to rearrange my office because I needed more wall space. The red strings indicate past or present romantic relationships. The blue strings indicate familial relationships, like genetics, you know? And then the X's indicate characters who have died. And then the question marks indicate characters who have not yet been revealed in the story. Anything else? Oh, yes, I did add something new to the mind map. I added these little symbols. Basically, there's a lot more supernatural characters introduced this season, as opposed to the last one where we kind of just had vampires and witches. So I wanted to create little symbols so you could understand who's who in the zoo. So we will get into that when we do. And also, I thought it might be interesting to let you guys know, I was on the Vampire Diaries wiki last night because I was curious like what the timeline was. So season 1 takes place from September 6th 2009 to February 25th 2010. Okay, so that's 5.5 months, which isn't that bad. But season 2, the season we're getting into, takes place from February 25th 2010 to May 1st 2010. That's 2 months. Gagged, to say the least. The amount of stuff that happened in 2 months in season 2, I'm flabbergasted, love. These characters do not get a break. But besides that, I think I should give you guys a little bit of a refresh on where we ended off things in season 1. Hello, welcome to my editing cave. I know I'm looking a little rough, but my hair looks great. And that's thanks to MDhair, who are actually the sponsor of this video. So MDhair is the world's first medical grade hair growth treatment, customized to the exact cause and type of hair loss that you're experiencing. The website uses a quiz and a scalp picture analysis to customize each kit. So you guys may have noticed over the past year, I've been growing out my hair, and that's been quite a journey for me. I've really struggled with hair loss. I lose a lot of hair in the shower or even when I'm brushing my hair. I have a really sensitive scalp that really reacts negatively to certain shampoos and conditioner. But ever since I've started using the MDhair shampoo and conditioner, those problems have gotten so much better for me. I come out the shower and I can run my hands or comb through my hair and I'm not losing clumps of hair. And my scalp, oh my god, you guys, thanks to the MDhair serum, my scalp feels so amazing. I mean, it feels like nothing, which is what you want. They also target what's going on internally with their customized hair wellness supplements. And it's kind of hard to tell if your hair is growing faster than usual, but I have had not 1, not 2, but 3 people in my life who've seen me over the past 2 weeks tell me that my hair has gotten so much longer, so I reckon it's working. MDhair's wellness supplements are developed by dermatologists and are formulated with medical grade ingredients. MDhair also offers 24/7 one-on-one dermatologist support, so that if you need to, you can fine-tune your medication's formula so that it works the best for you. And then there's also the marine collagen, which supports hair, nail, skin, and joint health. I've been really impressed with my time using MDhair's custom growth kit, and I highly recommend you guys give it a go. And because MDhair is sponsoring this video, if you click the link in my description and use code Luke70, you can actually get 70% off your first month of your customized hair kit. Alrighty guys, so let's get back into the video and discuss the recap for season 1 of the Vampire Diaries before we get into our deep dive of season 2. So first of all, we have our main character Elena, who has discovered that she was adopted. Her birth mother is this vampire named Isabel Fleming, who had relations with her father John Gilbert, who she thought was her uncle her her whole life, because he is actually the brother of her father, Grayson Gilbert, who she thought was her birth father, but it was actually her adoptive father. And him and Miranda Gilbert had their son, Jeremy. So Elena and Jeremy spent their whole lives thinking they're brother and sister, when technically they're actually cousins. They still consider each other brother and sister. Yeah, pretty big revelation over here in the family tree. Miranda Gilbert also has a sister, Jenna Summers, who is the legal guardian for Jeremy and Elena because their parents died in a car accident that Elena was actually in, but she miraculously survived because this vampire, Stefan Salvatore, saved her life. And she didn't know that. She just met him in high school. She was like, oh my god, he's so cute, look at that. And then she started dating him, found out he was a vampire, and so was his brother, who's a little bit unhinged. You know, he does some crazy stuff like, you know, manipulating and compelling and using her best friend Caroline. Her mother is the sheriff. Caroline actually just started dating Elena's ex-boyfriend Matt Donovan, and Matt Donovan's sister Vicky Donovan was dating Jeremy Gilbert until she was turned into a vampire by, you guessed it, Damon Salvatore. And then she tried to kill Jeremy and Elena, so then naturally Stefan had to kill her. Someone else that Vicky Donovan dated was Tyler Lockwood, who was the son of the mayor of this town where this story is set, Mystic Falls. However, he did die in the finale of the last season because John Gilbert, who is in the council, which is where all of these essentially vampire hunters gather in secret to protect the town and rid the town of vampires, he came up with some master plan along with the mayor where he was going to have this device that one of his ancestors created to basically make the vampires fall over and keel because they were in so much pain, and then that was going to expose them so that all of the deputies would inject them with vervain, which is this herb that is toxic to vampires, and they were all gathered up to be burned alive in this old building. And you know who died there? Jeremy's current girlfriend at the time, Anna, who was the daughter of Pearl, and Pearl was a vampire who was stuck in a tomb. Why was this tomb there, you may ask? Well, 150 years ago, vampires are very rampant in Mystic Falls, and one of the vampires that was very much involved in this situation was Miss Katherine Pierce. And Katherine Pierce was in a love triangle with Stefan Salvatore and Damon Salvatore. She's actually the one who fed them her vampire blood, which they died with, that then made them turn into a vampire. And have you noticed that Katherine looks identical to Elena? Yeah. That's pretty weird, isn't it? That's going to be something that we discuss as well. And if you didn't think these characters were connected enough, Elena's birth mother, Isabel, you remember her? Well, she's actually the ex-wife of Rick, who is in a relationship with Elena's aunt Jenna. So as you can see and as you can tell, these characters are all very much intertwined, and it all just came to a crescendo in the season 1 finale with this vampire roundup. And by the very end of that episode, Jeremy is so heartbroken about the death of his vampire girlfriend that he drinks a vial of blood she left with him and swallows a bunch of pills so that he can turn into a vampire. Meanwhile, Damon was just leaving the house to apologize to Jeremy for his involvement in Vicky Donovan's death. And when Damon's leaving the house, he bumps into who he thinks is Elena. They talk, they have a moment, they kiss, and Jenna interrupts them and tells her to come inside. And we find out that that character was not actually Elena, because what she does is she goes in the kitchen to John Gilbert and cuts off his fingers and stabs him. And he realizes, oh my god, that's not Elena, that's Katherine. And then the episode ends with Elena walking into the house, suggesting she's about to meet Katherine. Season 1 finale is amazing, and season 2 premiere basically picks up right where that left off. So without further ado, let's get into my deep dive and recap of the Vampire Diaries season 2, starting off with chapter 1, self-titled as The Crazy Ex. And this video will be covering the first 7 episodes of this 22 episode season.
What game are you playing?
Why, you want to play with me?
Alrighty guys, let's get into episode 1 of season 2, titled The Return. This episode is honestly one of the best season premieres of the show, I have to say. So let's get into it. The episode begins where season 1 ended, like I said, in the Gilbert house, and when Elena walks in, she hears noises coming from the kitchen. So she walks in and she sees John lying on the floor with blood everywhere. She freaks out, about to call 911, and John tells her, behind you, behind you. Elena drops the phone and looks behind her because Katherine was there, but when she turns around, Katherine has disappeared. So Elena picks up the knife and starts walking around the house looking for whoever this intruder is, and she keeps hearing a lot of whooshing, but eventually Katherine runs out the front door and slams it. Elena realizes the intruder is gone, and honestly the way they filmed the scene was so cool, of like Katherine just like tormenting Elena by running around behind her and Elena not realizing who is there. Remember, they haven't met at this point. And naturally, because of this occurrence, Elena freaks out and runs upstairs to Jeremy's room. She sees he's passed out. She tries to wake him up, and eventually he goes and wakes up. Honestly, one of the best opening scenes. So after the title sequence, the ambulance is taking John away. Stefan arrives and he goes upstairs with Elena to check on Jeremy because Elena is worried that he might be in transition. But Stefan looks at him, realizes he's still human, and tells her that he probably didn't take enough pills to actually die. So Anna's blood would have actually just healed him of that. And Jeremy's like, damn it. And Elena's like, no, Jeremy, like, why would you say that? You don't want to be a vampire. And Stefan gets a bit intense and grabs Jeremy by the face and is shaking him a bit, saying, Jeremy, Anna's blood could be passed through your system by now. So if you try and kill yourself, there's a chance you might actually die. You get that? And Elena's like, okay, Stefan, chill. So Elena's going to go to the hospital to check on Caroline, and Stefan's going to stay behind with Jeremy because I don't think I mentioned it, but at the end of the last episode, that same supernatural device that made all the vampires fall over and freak out, he made Mayor Lockwood fall down and freak out. And that same device also gave that effect to Tyler, who was driving in a car with Caroline and Matt, and they got in a car accident, and Caroline had to go to hospital because she passed out. There was just too much to recap. So over at the Mystic Falls Hospital, Bonnie arrives and she's talking to Matt about Caroline. He fills her in about what happened with Tyler. Also at the hospital, Damon arrives and is talking to Liz, who's obviously worried about Caroline. She's also freaking out because she says that Carol Lockwood is like on her ass about Mayor Lockwood, about how he got killed with the rest of the vampires in the roundup, and like she doesn't know what's going on. And she's obviously very emotional because like her daughter's in hospital, and Damon's like, don't worry, Liz, like I'll handle this. So Elena shows up to talk to Bonnie, who tells her that Caroline is really weak and they don't know if she's gonna make it. And Elena asks Bonnie if there's any kind of spell that she could do to help her. And Damon, who must have been eavesdropping, shows up and says, no, she doesn't know how to do that, but there is a way that we can help her by feeding her some of my blood. But Elena is like, no, Damon, we can't risk it. But to Elena's surprise, Bonnie just tells him to do it and says, this is Caroline we're talking about. We can't let her die. So yeah, just to clarify, in the Vampire Diaries, the way that vampires are turned is a human has to die with vampire blood in their system, and then they will die, come back, they'll be in transition, and then they need to feed on a human to complete the transition. It's not like a Venom situation like Twilight. And Damon asks Bonnie if he does this for Caroline, will she forgive him? Will they be all good? And Bonnie's like, no, but you'll do it anyway for Elena. So yeah, Bonnie's mad at Damon because, I mean, it's Damon. He's done a lot of messed up stuff, but Bonnie's Grams actually died trying to open the tomb for Damon because he thought that his lover, Katherine, was in there, and she wasn't. So she died essentially for nothing. Oh yeah, and Damon also tried to kill Bonnie once. So there's that too. So Bonnie leaves and Damon brings up to Elena about what happened that night, and like they should really talk about it because remember, he thinks that he kissed her. And Elena's like, yeah, we really should, Damon. A tomb vampire got in the house and tried to kill John. And Damon's confused, like, did that happen after I left? And Elena's like, wait, you were there? And he's like, yeah, when we kissed. And she just rolls her eyes like, ugh, Damon, I don't have time for this.
If you want to forget it happened, fine. But I can't.
And just to break up this awkward situation, Jenna shows up. Obviously, she still thinks that Elena kissed Damon, so it's very orkies. And Elena asks Jenna where she's been, and Jenna's like, at the fire department, I had to like sign off some documents because the fire happened in Grace and Gilbert's old building. And she's like, I told you that. And Elena's like, no, you didn't. And they have like a back and forth. And that's when Damon kind of realizes something, and he's like, oh no. Over in the Gilbert house, Stefan is like weirdly watching Jeremy sleep, and he hears a noise downstairs. So he walks down, and it's Elena. So he goes to like give Elena a hug, ask how Caroline's doing. She's like, not good. And when he hugs her, she's like, oh, that's just what I needed. And in that moment, he realizes it's not Elena, but it's Katherine.
Katherine.
At least I fooled one of you.
And they have a bit of a vamp fight back and forth, but then they hear the door open, which was Elena and Damon, and Katherine like breaks Stefan's arm, and then she like speeds out, and then Elena walks in and she's like, whoa, what happened here? And then some time has passed where obviously Stefan tells him everything that happened, and he says to Damon, Katherine said that she fooled at least one of us. What does that mean? And Damon says that when Katherine came over earlier, she pretended to be Elena, and Elena comes downstairs saying that she just spoke to Jeremy and told him everything because like she doesn't want to keep secrets between them, which like I'm kind of annoyed they didn't show us the scene of like her telling her brother that there's some like crazy vampire out there who looks exactly like her. Like, what was that about? So Elena asks what they're gonna do now that Katherine's been invited in, and Damon says move, and they're like, haha, very funny. And Damon says, if Katherine wanted you dead, you'd be dead by now, but you're not, so that means she has other plans. And Stefan's like, yeah, well, we need to find out what those plans are, and we need to not provoke her. And he asked Damon what happened earlier when she was pretending to be Elena, and Damon's like, well, when I thought she was Elena, we kissed. Obviously Stefan gets pissed, that's his girlfriend, so he charges him. They're about to have a fight, but Elena breaks it up and says to Stefan, he kissed Katherine, Stefan. I wouldn't do that. And that obviously really upsets Damon because like he obviously has a crush on Elena. And Elena says they need to go talk to John because he must know something if Katherine tried to kill him. But Damon's not really into that plan. He says he's just gonna lure her out. And they're like, how are you gonna do that? And he's like, I'm gonna ignore the bitch. So basically, in summary, like Damon's obviously very pissed off at Katherine because like he was in love with her. He thought she was in the tomb. When he found out that she's been alive this whole time and never came back for him, it really pissed him off. I mean, pining over someone for 150 years and then realizing they didn't care about you, that would do ya. So the next morning, Bonnie arrives at the hospital to check on Caroline and ask Matt how she's doing. And he says, come see for yourself. And she goes in the hospital room where Caroline is doing amazing. She's all bubbly and happy. And Bonnie's like getting all happy, cries. It's very cute. We're glad she's cured by Damon's blood, okay? So over at the Lockwood mansion, there is a wake for Mayor Lockwood. And Carol Lockwood is having an argument with Sheriff Forbes. Like, how could you let this happen? Blah, 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 blah. My husband's dead. And then Damon breaks it up. And Tyler is at the door greeting everyone, letting everyone in, and this mystery man arrives, and this man is Tyler's uncle, Mason Lockwood. Our first character reveal. So yeah, Mason is Mayor Lockwood's younger brother. So Elena and Stefan arrive at the hospital to talk to John. He freaks out thinking that Elena is Katherine. She reassures him that she's not. And she gives John his ring back. Remember the Gilbert ring? That's like magical ring that like protects you from a supernatural death, which is why Katherine cut off John's fingers in the first place. So they asked John why Katherine is here, and he said that she didn't really directly speak to him. So either kill him or leave because he cannot stand the sight of this vampire with his daughter. Yeah, he's like a big vampire hunter. It's his thing. And to make matters worse, he tells Elena that she should have driven a stake through Stefan's heart by now. So Elena gets really offended, like, oh my god, you have so much hate in your heart, and leaves. And Stefan gets all aggressive. He's in his aggressive mode this episode. Kind of love it though. He force feeds John some of his blood, which is like a vampire hunter's worst nightmare. And he tells him, you have 24 hours to leave town, otherwise I'll kill you and you'll be a vampire. Ooh. So back at the Lockwood mansion wake situation, Damon asks Sheriff Liz Forbes who Mason Lockwood is. She tells him, and she says that he wants no part of the council. And with Tyler at the door welcoming people in, he sees who he thinks is Elena, but is actually Katherine serving major cunt. I love this outfit so much. And he's like, thanks for coming. Come on in, Elena. So then Katherine gets invited in, and she does her little smirk situation because obviously in this series, vampires have to be invited into a home to be able to be let in, which seems to happen very easily for Katherine. I mean, it probably helps that she looks identical to Elena. So back at the hospital in the parking lot, Stefan informs Elena of his threat to John, which she approves of, actually, saying she doesn't want someone like that in her life. And he says he needs to go find Damon, and Elena's like, no, please, like, we gotta stick together. You guys can't fight. And he's like, no, he tried to kiss you. I'm not okay with that, Elena. And she tells him that Damon is not the problem, it's Katherine, and they're already letting Katherine get between them. I mean, that's true. They let Katherine get between them, they let Elena get between them. The difference is Elena's not intentionally trying to get between them, whereas Katherine, that's her MO. So back at the Lockwood mansion, Bonnie is talking to Damon about how the Gilbert device affected Mayor Lockwood and Tyler, even though they're not vampires. And Damon's like, oh, you mean the device you were supposed to destroy? So yeah, this device, Bonnie was supposed to destroy it because she's a witch, but she lied and didn't. And like, they all thought she did. And that's why it all happened in the first place, because they trusted that it wasn't going to work. And Damon asks Bonnie how Caroline's doing, and she's like, yeah, good. And he's like, you're welcome. And she says, no, you're welcome. You get to live another day. And she's like, if you make one wrong move, and he's like, you'll do what? And then she does that witch thing where she like fries his brain, and he's like, oh, Bonnie is really serving. She's fully in her witch form. She's not going to let people mess with her anymore.
Oh. I'm sorry. You were saying?
So she goes outside and vents to who she thinks is Elena, but is actually Katherine. And when Bonnie grabs Katherine's arm, she goes, oh, because remember, as a witch, she feels if someone is supernatural. She has that sixth sense. And then she makes up some excuse like, oh, I'm just gonna go check on Tyler, you know, pay my respects. And then Bonnie like quickly goes into some private room and calls Elena and is like, where are you? And Elena's like, I know, Bonnie, I'm late, don't worry, I'm almost there. And Elena hangs up, and when Bonnie turns around, Katherine's standing there.
We haven't officially met. I'm Katherine.
Oh my god, like, I'm sorry. This whole episode is just serve after serve with Katharina. So Bonnie says to Katherine that she knows who she is, and she's like, and I know who you are, you're the witch friend. And Bonnie tries to fry Katherine's brain, and at first she looks like she's in pain, but then she stops like she was faking it and says, I've been around a long time, Bonnie, you're gonna have to do better than that. And then she vamp speeds Bonnie against a wall and like has her full fangs out, serving once again, but Bonnie uses her magic to blow open the door so the public can see her. But then Stefan shows up and tells Katherine to leave Bonnie alone. So she drops her and goes out to talk with Stefan. And Stefan says to her, don't you think you're taking it a little too far, pretending to be Elena in public in front of all these people she knows? And Catherine's like, yes, but that's part of the fun, Stefan. And then Matt shows up, obviously thinking that Katherine is Elena. And it's really interesting. She like changes the cadence of her voice when she's imitating Elena, because obviously Elena speaks differently. So that's really cool.
Damon's here, somewhere. I've been avoiding him. Hi, Matt. I heard that Caroline's doing much better. Her recovery was practically miraculous. You must be so relieved.
Thanks, Elena.
His eyes are so blue.
Honestly, Nina Dobrev's acting skills you'll see throughout the season, especially when she's like playing Katherine who's pretending to be Elena. Like that's like a double character inception, which not many actors can do. After Matt goes, Stefan tells Katherine she needs to leave, and she says that he's hurting her feelings. Damon was a lot happier to see her. Well, then again, he did think that she was his girlfriend. She's so messy. I love it. He asks her what she's doing here, and she says that she missed him, and he asks what game she's playing, and she says, why? Do you want to play with me? And he's like, well, how can I play if I don't know the rules? And she's like, don't you remember, Stefan? No rules. Yeah, that's like kind of their thing. If we saw the flashback episodes from season 1, Katherine would always say to them back in 1864, like, no rules. Like, that's how she plays her games, guys. As her and Stefan walk past to go talk outside, we see Elena cross paths without even seeing each other. It's crazy. So Elena goes to check up on Damon, see how he's doing. She thinks he's hurt, but he's pretending like he's not. And she's like, when you get hurt, you get angry, and then something stupid happens. And he's like, oh, so that's it? You're worried that Catherine's gonna send me over the edge? And he's like, why is it such a surprise anyway that I would kiss you? And she says, it's not. It's a surprise that you'd think I'd kiss you back. And he goes, now I'm hurt. Oh my God. Shot to the heart, cause you're too late. So we cut to Jeremy bumping into Tyler while looking for the bathroom. And remember, Jeremy and Tyler do not have a good track record. They fight all the time. They both dated the same girl. Tyler was kind of a bully. And he apologizes to Tyler for the loss of his dad. And Tyler says that today has been full of people saying sorry who don't really give a crap. And Jeremy really empathizes with him because he kind of understands what it was like with his dad's death. But Tyler says the difference is that people actually meant it with his dad, whereas his dad was a dick. So Katherine and Stefan are walking outside the Lockwood property. The house is really far away, and they're like on this like field around a lake, and they're just chatting, being really sultry, catching up. You know, it's been 150 years since they saw each other. And Katherine's talking about how the Lockwoods have a lot more land than they used to, and how all of their possessions were built off of the fortunes of the tomb vampires. And Stefan asks why Katherine wanted them dead after she turned most of them anyway. And she says, there's nothing more annoying than a vengeful vampire. Why don't you go ahead and ask John? Okay, I don't know why I wrote this in my script. I must have been having a moment, but I said, side note, Stefan's veins in this scene are insane, and so is Katherine's hair. So much hotness in one scene, I'm having bi panic. Honestly, I kind of stand by that. So he mentions that she really hasn't changed at all, and she says that he has. He's stronger, meaner, sexier. And he tells her, oh, Katherine, don't flirt with me. I'm not Damon. I haven't spent the past 145 years obsessed with you. And Katherine says, well, your choice in woman says otherwise. Her quippy remarks, like she's doing the damn thing. But Katherine admits to Stefan that it does bother her that he's fallen in love with someone else. But Stefan says that his love for Katherine was never real because she compelled him to be in love with her. And just to refresh, compelling is something that these vampires can do where they can control the mind of a human, okay? But Katherine tells Stefan that she never compelled him and his feelings were real, and deep down in his Elena-loving heart, he knows that's true. And he says, no, Katherine, what the truth is that you're the same lying, selfish, manipulative bitch that you've always been. And if you don't leave town,
I will hunt you down and I will rip your heart out.
And Katherine seems taken aback by that and tells Stefan, you want to know why I came back? I came back for you. And he says, well, the problem is, Katherine, that I hate you. And then the iconic line, she takes this like candle metal stick out of the ground, stabs him in the gut, and says,
You hate me, huh? That sounds like the beginning of a love story, Stefan, not the end of one.
oh, that line is like burned into my memory and my brain because she really is right. Like sometimes, especially in like fiction, the line between hate and love is very blurry. And that's why we all love an enemies to lovers trope. Let's be real. Don't even act like you don't. So later we cut to Elena dressing Stefan's wounds, and he says he was trying to play along, but he let Katherine get to him. And then Damon shows up and says that it looks like Katherine's trying to steal Elena's guy. And Stefan's like, no, that's not what's happening. And he says, well, it's only fair, you know, considering I try to steal your girl. Ooh. At this point, Elena is just so over the brother bantus, and she says she's going to leave to go check on Jenna and Jeremy, and that they should just let her know when they're done. So Damon's being a little goofy, a little silly, having like a fake fight with Stefan, but Stefan says, this is not what we're going to do, okay? We're not going to let Katherine get between us. And Stefan goes to leave, and Damon says, but I kissed Elena. And Stefan stops and says, yeah, but that means that you care about her and that you have feeling. And that's a really important line for him to say, because throughout the whole of season 1, Damon has tried to come across that his humanity is off and like he doesn't care about anyone or anything and he's reckless. and he's just trying to paint himself out to be a monster because, I don't know, you can talk about toxic masculinity, but it's a vampire show. I think for him it's just easier to be that way than to actually be vulnerable. And Stefan tells Damon that he's not going to let Katherine destroy that part of him that is finally willing to feel something after all this time. And it's their choice if they let Katherine break them. Oh, we love a mature king. At the Gilbert house, John has a packed bag and he's about to leave, and he stops and talks to Jeremy. He's obviously still pissed at him about him orchestrating this vampire roundup fire burn situation, that was not proper English, where his girlfriend Anna died. And he asked Jeremy if he can say goodbye to Elena for him, and Jeremy's like, do it yourself. Yeah, I don't know, maybe say goodbye to your daughter, John. And John can obviously tell that he's mad and gives him this whole speech about how that's how him and his father were raised, you know, to hate vampires, it's in their DNA, to protect humans from them, blah blah blah, the whole saga. And Jeremy asked John about his magical ring and said, if that can save you, how come it didn't save my father? And John said, that's because that was not supernatural, that was an accident, nothing can save you from that. Oh, it's so sad. I mean, at the end of the day, Jeremy and Elena really are two teenagers grieving the loss of both of their parents. It only happened like 6-8 months ago at this point. We then cut to Tyler in his dad's office. This scene has such a beautiful song playing in it. It's called The River Has Run Wild by Mads Langer. It goes like, the river has run wild. I can't sing, but it's a really beautiful song. So he's looking at a photo of his father and he's getting really emotional and he gets angry and like smashes the photo frame along with other stuff on his desk. And his mom comes in trying to console him and help calm him down. But Tyler is getting really emotional, so Mason has to come and hold him down and calm him down.
What are you doing?
I hate him.
Oh, don't say anything, honey.
Let go of me! Tyler! Look at me! Calm down! You come undone.
And honestly, I don't really like Tyler as a character that much, but I really did feel for him in this scene. Like, it made me sort of feel for men who struggle to allow themselves to feel their emotions, and because of that they end up suppressing them and they end up exploding through anger and violence. I'm not saying that them doing that to anyone is okay, but it just kind of paints a picture of like what it's like in the world for certain people who are not allowed to express their emotions, you know? I don't know, I just think that the scene was handled really well, if that makes sense. But in general, this is a constant issue for Tyler, is all of his emotions just turn to anger, and he has a very quick temper. And then we get a really sexy scene. Okay, so Damon is at the Salvatore house and Katherine shows up all of a sudden saying she came to say goodbye. And he's like, oh, you're leaving so soon? And she's like, I know when I'm not wanted. And he tells her, no. And Damon says, don't pout, it's not attractive for a woman your age, which is hilarious because Catherine's like 500 years old. He goes to leave the room and Katherine vamp speeds in front of him and says, what, no goodbye kiss? And he asks her what she's up to, and she says, trust me, Damon, when I'm up to something, you'll know about it. Ooh, and she inches closer to him and says, so what's it gonna be, Damon? Kiss me or kill me. We both know you're only capable of one. She literally has this man wrapped around her finger. I can't. He goes to leave again and she vamp speeds around him and pins him to the ground and is like, my sweet, innocent Damon. And then he flips her, choking her, and hesitates, but eventually he ends up kissing her. And they have a pretty frisky, hot, sexy scene. The implications of this is it's a lot, okay? Damon finally gets to have his moment with Katherine after not seeing her for over 150 years, thinking she was in this tomb, pining over her, trying to find out how to get her out of there, going in the tomb, seeing she's not in there. Like, this man has been through a lot. So in the middle of their really steamy sesh, clothes are starting to come off, and Damon says, can we just pause? And she's like, ugh, so she like throws him off of her. Also, side note, I wrote this in my script. Katherine in her bra in this scene sends me. So hot, the hair, I can't even deal. Yeah, I'm like really obsessed with Katherine's hair. They put Nina in so many freaking extensions, like, and I love curly brown hair. Let's just move on. It's not relevant to the plot. Yeah, I really love the show for the plot. So he says he has one question for her, and if she answers it right, he promises that they can go back to the fireworks and forget the past 150 years, and they can start over and have an eternity together, but he just needs the truth. And she stops him there and says, I already know your question and the answer. And she tells him, the truth is, Damon, I never loved you. It was always Stefan. And then she leaves. Oh my God. This is so heartbreaking for him. I can't even, like, the way that his face, like, he just looks so crushed. I feel so bad for him. Oh my God. Okay, let me move on. I'm getting emotional. So we cut to the Gilbert house when Elena goes in her room and she gets a fright because Damon is sitting on her bed. Very Edward Cullen, like, just kind of like broke into her room without her consent. Very weird. And she asks what he's doing there, and he says he's just looking out for her, and she's like, oh, okay, thank you. And Elena can tell that he's drunk and like upset, and she says that, and he says he's not upset, that's for people who care. And she's like, Damon, you do care. So he's still playing on that thing that he doesn't have emotions. Because, side note, vampires in this series have this thing kind of in their biology, their brain, called a humanity switch, and they can just like turn it off, which makes them lose all those human emotions and just be like a fully vamp, monster, hunt, kill. You get the drill. Oh my god, spitting bars here. And he brings up what Elena said earlier about her being surprised that he thought that she would kiss him back. And he says what they're doing here means something and that she's lying to him and to Stefan and to herself. And he can prove it. And then he starts forcefully trying to kiss her. Like he actually does kiss her and is like forcing himself on her. It's very disturbing. It's essay. I'm gonna say it right here, okay? That's what it is. It's disturbing to watch. This is why you Delena fans, look, I'm gonna be neutral on the Delena situation, but let's keep this scene in mind, guys. So she tries pushing Damon off of her and says, Damon, don't do this. You're better than this. But he keeps trying to force himself on her and she pushes him back saying, Damon, I care about you, but I love Stefan. It's always gonna be Stefan. And that's what Katherine had just said to him as well. So this really triggered Damon. And when Jeremy comes in the room to check on Elena and is like, what's going on here? She's like, don't worry, leave. And Damon's like, no, he wants to be a vampire. And he vamp speeds to Jeremy, pins him against the wall. And he says, you want to turn off the pain? It's the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do is flip the switch and snap. And then he snaps Jeremy's neck. And the cry that came out of Elena.
No, Damon, stop it!
You want to shut out the pain? All you have to do is flip the switch and snap.
Damon! No!
She's like, Damon, no. Oh my god, I'm getting emotional, guys. I'm sorry. I'm like very emotionally attached to the show. Like, it f***ed me up. Oh, don't swear. It was a lot, okay? Okay, so then Damon like realizes what he did and is like, oh my god. And he just leaves and Elena is just crumbling. But thankfully, Elena looks down at Jeremy's hand and she notices that he's wearing the magical Gilbert supernatural ring that can bring him back to life. So she calms down a little bit. Obviously, he's still upset, but like she knows that he's gonna come back. So obviously, after that conversation, John must have given Jeremy the ring. So back at the Lockwood mansion, Mason's talking to Tyler and he's asking how his mom is and he says she just popped a couple pharmaceuticals and went to bed. And Tyler says he didn't mean to freak her out. He just doesn't know why he gets like this and he can't control it. And Mason says, it's the curse of being a Lockwood. Interesting. And he just needs to learn how to manage it. Tyler says he doesn't want to be like this anymore. And Mason says, none of us do. That's why it's a curse. Honestly, Mason, could you be more cryptic? Could you be giving more hints? As if he's not gonna want to know more about what you're saying. At the Gilbert house now, Stefan has arrived in Elena's room where she's holding an unconscious Jeremy. And Stefan's like, Damon knew he was wearing the ring. That's why he must have done it. And Elena's like, no, he didn't know, Stefan. And Stefan trying to like justify his brother's actions because he obviously loves him and says that Katherine must have really got under his skin and undid anything good about him. And Elena says, there's nothing good about him, Stefan. Not anymore. He's decided what he wants. He doesn't want to feel. He wants to be hated. It's just easier that way. He got his wish. I hate him, Stefan. Oh my god, it's kind of sad, but also like what he deserves, you know? Like you can't just kill someone's brother like that. But luckily, Jeremy wakes up in a gasp and Stefan and Elena are there to comfort him. So this closing scene is, guys, I want you to understand how iconic this is. This completely changed the trajectory of the show, okay? So Caroline gets woken up in her hospital bed by who she thinks is Elena, but it's actually Katherine who introduces herself and says that she hopes that she can give the Salvatore brothers a message. And Caroline's really confused, but Katherine says, tell them, game on, and then she smothers Caroline to death with a pillow. Yeah, so that was really intense. And when Katherine just like walks away with like her heels, oh my god, like she's serving all the time. Anyway, that is the end of episode 1. Iconic episode, obsessed, perfection. Alrighty guys, I just wanted to pop in real quick. I know I look shocking, and that is because I'm editing this video, but I wanted to say that we just got through the first episode. Wow, that was great. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed that. And by the end of this video, if you somehow are still wanting to hear me talk about the Vampire Diaries even more, then over on my Patreon, I actually do a companion series where about a week after these videos come out on YouTube, I post a video on Patreon where we watch some scenes together and we actually get to break them down and analyze the characters and their relationships. I usually pick like one storyline per episode. It's about an hour and a half long. So basically, it's like the Evermore to this video's folklore. You know, it's a sister video. So if you want to check that out, click the link in the description and join my Patreon if you want. But yeah, moving on with the video. Hope you enjoy the rest of it. Let's move on to the next episode titled Brave New World. So we start at the hospital where Caroline wakes up and goes and talks to a nurse, confused, saying that her friend Elena visited her, and Caroline's like, but she said her name was Katherine. And the nurse is like, you should go back to bed. And Caroline's like, I'm hungry. She's like, wait till breakfast. So she forces Caroline back into her room, but Caroline notices a smell and she goes to follow it, and it's a patient getting a blood transfusion. The nurse catches her and takes her back to her room, but we see Caroline opens up her arms and she has a blood bag. Not knowing why she's doing what she's doing, she opens it and goes to drink it. And at first she's disgusted and she throws the blood bag across the room, but then she wants it again and she goes up to it and drinks it and finishes it. So yeah, guys, Caroline's a vampire. Oh wait, give me a second. Alrighty, there you go, Caroline. Congratulations. You are now a vampire. Not sure if you wanted that, but it's what you got. So I think now is a good time to tell you about what all my different symbols mean. So these symbols are actually from the Vampire Diaries. They're from season 3, so we'll get to it when we get to it, but I wanted to use them now because season 2 is really where the supernatural characters ramp up. So this one with the sun and the fangs is for vampires, naturally. This one for the witches, which I can't really describe what the symbol is yet, but that's the symbol for witches. And then we have another symbol that we'll get to. But this symbol here that Elena and Katherine have is the symbol for doppelgangers, which is what they are, which we'll learn more about pretty soon. So over at the high school, there's a carnival being set up, and Bonnie is talking to Elena about the freaky resemblance that she has to Katherine. And Elena's like, yeah, I don't know, she's like my ancestor, but I don't want to talk about it. And she just wants to continue setting up because obviously she wants to distract herself. And yeah, basically the two of them are like running the show because Caroline's in hospital. Otherwise, you know, she'd be all over that. Caroline is involved in literally everything. So over in like the high school hallways, Stefan gives Jeremy some vervain, and he gives him the 411 on how it protects humans from compulsion and how it affects vampires. So yeah, vervain is this herb. If humans ingest it or wear it, it prevents vampires from being able to compel them. And if they drink it or consume it, then when the vampires drink their blood, their throat will burn because vervain is toxic to vampires. And Jeremy's really upset that Damon killed him and he wants to kill him, but Stefan's like, he's stronger than you, just let it go. So Jeremy leaves when Elena shows up, and she's talking to Stefan saying that she hoped this carnival would bring Jeremy back into the world of being a high school teenager and hoped that it would for all of them. But Stefan brings up Damon and Elena shuts him down saying, no D word today. So then we cut to the Lockwood mansion where Damon is talking to Carol Lockwood because Damon is actually a part of the council. He infiltrated it even though he's a vampire, but none of the humans on the council know that he is. So they're talking about the ongoings of the vampires in the town, and they're like, it's been good, it's been quiet, and how Carol's going to be acting mayor since Richard died. They get interrupted when Tyler and Mason arrive back in the house, and Carol closes the doors, and Damon is like, is it safe to talk? And she's like, yeah, it is. It's just Mason made it pretty clear he didn't want to be a part of the council, and I don't see any reason why he should be now. So Damon's in that room, and he's eavesdropping with his super vampiring on Tyler and Mason. And Mason asks Tyler if exercising helps with his anger, and Tyler says, no, it just like comes out of nowhere, and he goes blind with rage. And Mason asks if there's like a pattern to these episodes, once a month or only at night. Tyler says, nah, all he knows is that he loses himself and he becomes something else. Really ramping up to something, aren't we? So back at the hospital, Caroline's in bed, and she puts her hand out to like a ray of sun coming through the window, and it like burns her, and she pulls it back. Keeping in mind, guys, she doesn't know about vampires, so she's like very confused. I mean, she has had interactions with vampires where like Damon, you know, would use her, drink from her, try and kill her, sleep with her, manipulate her, all of that kind of stuff, but he compelled that away from her memory. So Matt comes in and he goes to kiss Caroline, but like he's in the sunbeam, so she like pulls back, and he tells her that she's getting released tomorrow morning, and she freaks out being like, no, I need to be released tonight. And he's like, chill, Caroline, I know it's hard for your neurotic brain to handle it, but like the carnival's gonna go on without you. And she's like, I'm not neurotic. And he's like, yeah, you are, but it's cute. Like, I gotta say, I don't really like how everyone is always calling, well, mainly Matt is always calling Caroline crazy and neurotic. Like, everybody knows you shouldn't call a woman that, or like your partner that. It's just rude. And she says she wants to leave because this hospital is like depressing, and Matt's like, well, that's because you're sitting in the dark. And he goes to open the curtains, and she's like, no. And then she vamp speeds into a corner, but he obviously doesn't see that. When he turns around, he sees her huddled in the corner.
What's wrong with you?
Close it.
And he's like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna come back later. Instead of comforting her, Matt, you're just gonna leave? Interesting. And Caroline starts hyperventilating, panicking, because like this is so confusing for her. So Stefan arrives at the Salvatore house where Damon offers him a glass of blood. Like, have we learned nothing, Damon, from what happened to Stefan? If you don't remember, or if you don't know, Stefan is a bloodaholic. He can't drink human blood, he's addicted to it, so he has to drink animal blood instead. And Stefan asks him if he's heard from Katherine. But Damon changes the subject to, what is the Lockwood family's secret? Because they were affected by the Gilbert device, but they're not vampires. But Stefan isn't interested and brings up Katherine yet again. And Damon's like, she came back to express her undying love for you, so I'm gonna leave you to deal with it. Back at the hospital, Caroline is putting her jewelry back on, and she goes to put on this necklace that Elena gave to her, and it burns her because it was a vervain necklace. When Elena found out about vampires, she gave everyone in her life a piece of jewelry that had vervain in to protect them, and she like throws it across the room when it burns her. And she takes a sip of blood from this blood bag that she has to like calm her down, and while looking in the mirror, she notices that her eyes are going red and growing veins under them, and then she cries in pain when fangs start growing out of her. you imagine how scary this would be? But also, I think it's interesting because, like, we've seen in other scenes in season 1 where, you know, humans turn into vampires and have their transition, that they would, like, get their veins and their fangs straight away. It seems like there's not really a direct timeline as to when these things come, which I guess makes sense. Like, biology doesn't always work on the same timeline, but I don't know. I think it's weird that she only got it the next day. Anyway, so a nurse comes in to check on Caroline, and Caroline vamp speeds and pins her against the wall and says, "You can't tell anyone, you can't tell anyone," and accidentally compels her without realizing it. And the nurse is like, "I won't tell anyone." So Caroline's like, "Good, because I'm starving." And then she sinks her fangs right into her and has a lot of moaning. I guess it's her first time feeding off of a human, so it was really pleasurable. So it's nighttime now and the carnival is in full force, and Elena asks some guy at the carnival who's working there if he can help with the karaoke speakers, and he flirts with Bonnie, so she goes with him to help out with the problem. So over at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler catches Mason rifling through his dad's things in his old office, and he asks what he's looking for, and Mason says he's looking for this heirloom that belonged to his mother. It was a moonstone, and Tyler's like, "I don't know where it is, you should ask my mom," and then they both leave for the carnival. Over at the carnival, Damon finds Jeremy, and he's cracking a lot of jokes with him, and Jeremy's like, "Oh, you're pretty confident considering I could just expose you to everyone." And Damon's like, "Look, what we're not going to do is walk around like we're invincible when I could just end you this easily." And he puts Jeremy in a headlock and rips off his magical ring and says,
"I will shove this ring so far up your ass, you really have something to choke on."
Honestly, he is so unhinged. The way that he's behaving like this after he just snapped his neck and tried to kill him, crazy behavior. So over at the hospital, Caroline leaves Matt a voicemail saying that the doctor just charged her so she can go home now. And the nurse is sitting down and Caroline looks at the neck damage and it's like, "Okay, let's go over the story. What is it again?" And the nurse is like, "My husband likes to get kinky." And Caroline's like, "Yes." So, and then she tells the nurse to forget what happened and goes and leaves. And the nurse is like, "Wait, what happened?" And Caroline's like,
I don't know how that works, but it's brilliant.
So at the carnival, Damon and Stefan are watching Tyler have an arm wrestling competition. And Damon's like, he seems really strong, like super strength. And Stefan's like, "Oh, maybe it's just because he's a triple varsity athlete." And then Mason goes and beats Tyler in the arm wrestling situation. And they ask for another competitor, and Damon forces Stefan to go and do it. He's like, "Just check it out, see how strong he is." So they go and do it, and Stefan's obviously very confident because he's a vampire and he thinks Mason's a human, but Mason actually ends up beating him. And when Stefan goes back to Damon, he's like, "You didn't even try." And he's like, "No, I did." He felt like strong, not like a vampire, but definitely not like a human. And I'm not really sure how Stefan made this distinction, like how he can feel the different kinds of strength. Maybe because like vampire strength is really fast, human strength is like weak, and this kind of strength is more of like a brute force, if I were to just guess. Damon then compels that guy who works for the carnival, who was like off with Bonnie, and it tells him that he wants him to go pick a fight with Tyler Lockwood and don't back down. And then he goes and does it, and Stefan is like, "What are you doing?" And Damon's like, "I just want to conduct a little experiment. That Tyler kid is incapable of staying out of a fight, and maybe his ambiguously supernatural uncle will step in and help." Oh, I love Damon's plans. He just like is so, I don't know how to describe it, like he just doesn't F around. He's like, "We're just gonna do what we gotta do to get what we gotta know." So then Damon's walking down the empty high school hallways and he hears footsteps and sees that it's Caroline, and he's like, "Oh, how you, Blondie?" And she's like, "I remember everything, Damon. I remember how you manipulated me, abused me, erased my memory, fed on me." And Damon's like, "No, that's impossible. Unless you were," and then Caroline's like, He's like realizing that she's turned into a vampire. And this part's really funny. So Caroline tells Damon she has a message from Katherine, game on, and Damon tries to grab her and she catapults him, like pushes him in the air, and he goes flying and hits the ground, and she turns around and simply goes,
You suck.
and then like walks out. I just love how like unabashedly teenager, is that an adjective? I don't know. Like she just acts like such a teenager, and I love it because sometimes you forget that these characters are teenagers because teenagers just don't act like the way most of these characters do. So then Damon goes to Elena and tells her to come with him, and she's apprehensive because remember, she hates him because he tried to kill her brother, but she goes anyway because he stresses the importance of it. And we go to Tyler, who's walking through the carnival, and he's getting followed by Stefan, and he lands up in the parking lot where that carnival guy bumps past him and he like instigates a fight. Tyler tries to stay out of it, but eventually they end up in a tussle, and Stefan's like hiding behind a car watching this, and Mason intervenes as expected, but the guy will not back down. So Mason is like getting really aggressive with this guy. The guy ends up like shoving him down, and then he ends up like jumping really high like over this car and lands on his hands and feet, and his eyes are like amber, and he is just like superhuman. Like he does not look like a human. He looks like something else, but not a vampire. So the Lockwoods bounce, and then Stefan goes up to the guy and just checks that he's okay, which is really nice, but obviously he's also very shocked by this new revelation. So Caroline finds Matt while he's doing the ring toss, and he goes to hug her, but she can't handle the smell of his carotid artery, and she gets uncomfortable, and she just leaves and tells Matt to leave her alone when he doesn't want to let her go. So over in one of the classrooms, Damon is filling Elena and Stefan in on Caroline, he thinks being a vampire, and they figure it's Katherine because like who else would it be? And remember, Caroline had Damon's blood in her system, and Elena's like, why would Katherine do this? And Damon says because she's a manipulative, nasty little slut. Not sure what being a slut has to do with this. Now Damon wants to kill Caroline because that's like essentially his MO. Whenever something's like a nuisance or inconvenient, he's like, let's just get rid of it. But of course, Caroline being Elena's best friend, she's like, absolutely not. And Stefan's like, no way, Damon. But Damon's like, Caroline is so neurotic, she's not gonna make a good vampire. And her mother is a vampire hunter. But they persist that killing Caroline is not an option. So Caroline is found somewhere private, like behind the carnival, to have a bit of a freak out, and she's crying. And that carnival guy, who's already been through so much, shows up, and Caroline smells his blood that he got from his injuries with his fight with Tyler and Mason. And she goes up to him and apologizes, saying, I can't help it, I'm sorry. And then she starts feeding on him pretty aggressively and animalistically. So Matt's filling Bonnie in on Caroline's weird behavior, and Bonnie's like, Matt, like she almost died. One thing I've noticed is that Matt confides in Bonnie a lot. Bonnie's got a lot on her shoulders, let the woman breathe. And he says to her like, no, I can handle like normal Caroline, but like this is different, something is different, I can't explain it. And then Elena is with Stefan, asking him if he agrees with Damon, and Stefan's like angrily punching stuff, and he says Damon's right, but not about what we should do, but about what's going to happen. Katherine signed Caroline's death sentence. But Elena doesn't want it to end this way, obviously. So back at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler and Mason arrive back, and Tyler wants to know what happened in the parking lot. He's like, your eyes were glowing, like what was that? And Mason's like, oh, it was just a reflection of the headlights. The moves that I learned were like from martial arts, but Tyler doesn't believe it, and Mason gets really defensive and angry, and it's like, you want to know what that was, Tyler? It was me getting your delinquent ass out of a fight yet again. So then Stefan and Elena are still looking for Caroline, and Stefan stops because he smells blood, but Damon actually finds Caroline first, and he's like pretending to comfort her, and he's like, I'll help you. And Caroline's obviously emotionally breaking down because she just killed this guy, and she's like, how are you gonna help me? And Damon's like, the only way I can, I'm gonna kill you. And she begs him not to kill her. He's like, I don't want to die. And he's like, oh, but you're already dead. And she's like, no, I'm not, don't say that. Like really, Damon just does not give a shit about Caroline. It's actually really sad. And I also really don't believe that these vampires are really dead. Like their biology functions a little bit too closely to humans as opposed to like, you know, the ones in Twilight. So I don't really believe they're dead. Their heart still pumps, otherwise when you rip it out, why would they die? Think about it. So Damon is about to stay Caroline, but luckily Stefan arrives just in time and pulls him off, and Caroline starts freaking out at the sight of Elena.
Get away from me! You killed me!
No, Caroline, that wasn't me. You know that was Katherine.
No, then why did she look like you?
Then go to take her away to like comfort her, and Damon's like, it's just a matter of time, and he vamp speeds towards Caroline, but Elena stands in the way of her and is like, no, Damon, she's my friend. She's like a human shield because she knows that Damon would never hurt her. And Damon's like, fine, but whatever happens to her, it's on you. And then Bonnie arrives on the scene, and she is obviously flabbergasted and distraught that she now realizes that her best friend is a vampire because she hates vampires. So Stefan takes Caroline into the bathroom to help clean up all the blood of her, and she's like hyperventilating and like having a panic attack about how Bonnie and Matt are gonna hate her, how she's a monster and she's a murderer. And he explains to her, Caroline, these are all just your emotions that are heightened, it's normal. And her face starts doing the veiny bloodshot thing in the mirror, and she freaks out, and Stefan's like, look, Caroline, and he makes his face do it, and then he makes it go away. It was so cute. Like, he's so good at comforting people. He's like a vampire coach, which is funny because he's a bloodaholic. And he tells her, Caroline, when the bloodlust comes through, you just fight it and push it away. It's the only way to survive this thing. She asks why Katherine would do this to her, and he says he doesn't know.
I promise you, I will not let anything happen to you.
Oh, it's just such a touching scene. So Bonnie's like crying outside by the scene of the crime where Elena is as well, and Damon's like, don't pout about it. And he's like, come on, we have a body to bury. And then Bonnie starts frying his brain.
I told you what would happen if anyone else got hurt. I didn't do this. It wasn't his fault. Everything that happens is his fault, Elena.
And she uses her magic to turn on this hose pipe, and there's like water streaming down towards him. Bonnie uses her magic to light it on fire, which starts to light Damon on fire, and he's freaking her out. And Elena begs Bonnie to stop, but she's like stuck in this trance. trance. So Elena jumps over the fire and pulls Bonnie out of the trance. And Bonnie's like, why, Elena? Why did you do that? And she's like, because this isn't you, Bonnie. This can't be us. So yeah, Damon's alive. He's just a little smoky. So a little bit of time has passed and Stefan's in the high school hallways talking to Elena. And she's like, I just can't believe what this day has turned into. I was so stupid thinking it could be a normal day when nothing about my life is normal. And he apologizes to her and she's like, I'm fine. And he's like, you don't have to say you're fine if you're not. And she's like, it just is what it is. And then she leaves to go home. So over at the Lockwood house, Carol and Mason and Tyler are all like saying goodnight to each other. And Tyler's like pretending like he's gonna go to bed. But he goes to his father's office and finds this secret little compartment under a rug in the floor, and then opens a box that has another box inside of it that has something else inside of it. It's like Russian dolls, where he finds the moonstone. It's essentially what you think it is. It looks like a oval stone that kind of looks like the color of the moon, and obviously is going to play a lot of importance. So at the Salvatore house, Damon arrives where he finds Jeremy, and Damon's busy pouring himself a glass of bourbon, and he's like, I wouldn't drink that. I laced it with vervain because I was going to kill you. I mean, it's only fair. You killed me. And he throws the steak over to Damon and he grabs it and asks him what made him wisen up. And he said that his father and his uncle both hated vampires and he doesn't really know what killing him would do. And Damon says his father hated vampires too. And it's a cute little scene where, you know, they kind of bond, but like Damon's still being a dick.
Look, I don't do the big brother thing very well. Sorry to have any milk and cookies to offer you.
Dick.
So Matt sneaks into Caroline's room and obviously like she's kind of freaked because she doesn't know who it is and she like vamp speeds away. But then she sees it's him and he's like, oh, is your basket case over? And she just tells him that he should go. And he's like, Caroline, you almost died and it freaked me out. I'm not in a position to lose someone else. And he says that he's pretty sure that he's in love with her and that he thinks that she doesn't feel the same way. And she gives him a passionate kiss and hug and her veins and eyes are starting to come through again, but she fights the bloodlust and breathes through the hunger. Another cute scene. So our final scene of the episode is Elena in her bed getting woken up by Stefan. Oh my god, what is all these boyfriends breaking into their girlfriend's room? So he takes her to the empty carnival and he says that he compelled the guard on break so that he could kiss his girlfriend at the top of the Ferris wheel. And he tells her that what Katherine did is only the beginning and there's the stuff with Tyler's family that they don't even know yet. And he just wants to get back to the reason he came to this town, which was to have a life with her and they can't forget to live it. And she asks him how they're going to get to the top of this Ferris wheel and then he holds her and is like, close your eyes, spider monkey. I'm kidding, he didn't say that. And then he kind of like vamp jumps. It's almost like he's flying onto the top of the Ferris wheel and she laughs and they have a kiss and Elena's like, it's not going to get any easier, is it? And he says, no, it's not. Yeah, so that's the end of the episode and boy oh boy were they right because it only gets more and more intense from here. So let's get into episode 3, Bad Moon Rising. So the episode begins with Rick arriving at the Salvatore house to talk to Stefan, Damon, and Elena about the information that he could possibly know and answer their questions about the Lockwood family because his ex-wife and Elena's birth mother, Isabel Fleming, used to be a professor at Duke University where she taught anthropology, like mainly focused on like supernatural sort of situations. So this scene is also intercutting with Mason Lockwood, who is going on a run. So while they're doing their talking, we intercut with him. And also Tyler is actually following him because he's obviously trying to learn about his secret. So Rick's talking about Isabel's research and how it was all rooted in legend, folklore, and fiction. But Damon's like, oh yeah, like that story about vampires and like vampires are real. So what else did she research? And Rick mentions lycanthrope, which is a fancy word for werewolf. And Damon thinks that's impossible because he's like, I've been around for 160 years. If there were werewolves running around, I would have come across one by now. And that's just really ignorant to think, Damon. The world doesn't revolve around you, Damon. Then we cut to Mason and he's walking down these stairs into this like cell/dungeon situation underground in the forest. And Damon talks about how the reason they suspect the Lockwoods might be supernatural is because of how the Gilbert device affected them, but how the vervain did not affect Mayor Lockwood, and how Mason has also been exhibiting inhuman-like behavior. So Mason leaves that little dungeon under the ground in the forest, and Tyler goes down and he finds a bunch of chains, and he also finds like scratches on the walls, so it's very peculiar indeed. So then we cut to Matt knocking on Caroline's door, but she doesn't answer because she can't walk out into the sun, so she looks very defeated by that situation, and Matt calls and leaves Caroline a message inviting her to come meet him at the swimming hole. So Elena's talking to Stefan at the Gilbert house while she's packing her things about if he's uncomfortable with her going with Rick and Damon to go to Duke University to get more research. But Stefan's like, no, it's okay. You want to know more stuff about your birth mother and about how you're connected to Katherine. You got to do what you got to do. Besides, I got to stay here and take care of Caroline. So downstairs, Jenna is thanking Rick at the door for helping Elena have a connection to her birth mother. Remember, Jenna still does not know about the supernatural world at all. And he tries to apologize to her for being a bit stop and start with their relationship. And Jenna's like, no, don't apologize. Just go do what you need to do. Jenna's really cool. She's a cool girl. And Elena's packing her things in the car and Damon's being a jerk. So she purposely makes out with Stefan in front of him.
Call me if you need anything.
Oh, I'll take really good care of her.
So at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler is asking his mother about the old ruins in the forest, and she tells him it was part of the original plantation house, and if it hadn't burned to the ground, they'd still be living in it. And he asks about the freaky underground cellar, and she says,
"Well, this is the South, honey, but no one likes to reminisce about the old slave days."
"Oh yeah, I bet you don't." So then Mason shows up, and Tyler's asking his mom if he can have some friends over. So Tyler's like the one throwing the swimming hole party. And I love how he says a few friends, but it's actually like close to 100. You know how teens always do that in movies and shows. So over at the girl, Stefan is talking to Bonnie about how he wants her to make a daylight ring for Caroline, and Bonnie says she doesn't know how to. And Stefan's not really buying that because of like all the other magic that Bonnie has done. And Bonnie's like, you know, I just don't want to do it because Caroline's already killed someone, and I don't want to make it easier for her to do that again. And Stefan's trying to reason with Bonnie, like, if Caroline's gonna have any chance of surviving this, she can't be detached from her friends and her school and everything that's normal to her. And he convinces her that he will take care of her and make sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. And then we get a scene with Elena and Damon and Rick in the car, and these two are arguing back and forth about whether or not Damon knew that Jeremy was wearing the magic Gilbert ring before he killed him. He insists he did. Elena insists he didn't. Then in Caroline's room with Bonnie and Stefan, they're there to make her the ring, and Bonnie tells Caroline that the witch who gives the ring its magic can take it away, and if she ever kills anyone, and Caroline's like, I'm not gonna kill anyone, Bonnie, and she's like, it's an urge that is a part of you now, okay? I don't know what you're gonna do. And Caroline's just really upset, like, you know, Bonnie, you're supposed to be my friend. And she says, I am, but I can't ignore what happened, and if you want to be friends, you're gonna have to prove that the old Caroline that I knew isn't gone. And I just feel like I get it. I do get it. I understand why Bonnie feels this way, but at the same time, like, since Caroline has been turned, she hasn't really spent any time with her to know if she's changed or if she hasn't, beyond the fact that she's now a vampire, which she cannot control and was not her choice. So after all the back and forth, Bonnie does the spell on the ring. You don't really see or hear any chanting, like, it's just like a little and then like it happens. She gives it to Caroline, she puts it on her finger and is like, is that it? And Bonnie's like, well, and just like opens the curtains and lets the sun in.
Have you even done this before?
Caroline?
Well, I just want to make sure it worked. It worked.
What if it hadn't, Bonnie?
She's all yours.
It's a very cute, funny scene. So Rick, Elena, and Damon arrive at Duke University to Isabel's old office, and her research assistant, her grad student, very enthusiastic to help them find what they're looking for. Her name is Vanessa, and she lets them into the office to look around and leaves, but when she comes back, she points an arrow at Elena and tries to shoot her, but Damon comes in just in time, and the arrow goes through him instead. Ooh. So Rick pins Vanessa down, and Elena helps Damon take the arrow out of him, and basically Vanessa's freaking out, talking about Katherine. So obviously she thinks Elena's Katherine, and she's like, Katherine's not supposed to be alive. Like, this is impossible. So it's like she was learning all this stuff about the supernatural characters and creatures, but she didn't believe it to be true. Rick is like, if you worked with Isabel, you knew this is very much possible. And Elena's like, I'm Elena, not Katherine.
And this is Damon Salvatore, who you just shot.
I'd be extra nice to me right now.
Alrighty, so then we're in the forest with Caroline and Stefan. So Stefan is there to teach her how to hunt animals, and she's like, I don't want to hunt on rabbits. They're so cute.
Hey, Caroline, if you're not serious about all this, I think you should tell me.
No, I am.
And she has like a teenage freak out about being a vampire, and it's pretty funny.
Look, I swear that I am, okay? But it's just, I haven't been in the sun for days, and everyone's at the swimming hole having fun, and Matt is there. He finally told me that he loved me, but I've been blowing him off, and now you want to eat bunnies, and I'm kind of freaking out, okay?
Stefan's kind of laughing, like, you know, when someone becomes a vampire, the natural behaviors become amplified, and he explains how when he was a human, he always felt a lot of empathy, and because of that, he always had a lot of guilt, and that got really magnified when he was turned into a vampire. And she's like, oh, okay, so then you think that I'm a insecure, neurotic control freak on crack. And they laugh, and their bench is pretty cute, and I see the startings of something. Anyway, so then we go to the watering hole where all these southern kids are swimming in this murky, muddy swamp water. Couldn't be me. And Tyler is like objectifying all these women in their bikinis to Matt, who's like really insecure about his relationship with Caroline because she's been a bit MIA. And then Mason arrives to like warn Tyler about getting everyone off the property before the sun goes down, because that's when someone will end up drunk and dead at the bottom of the lake. Okay, intense. So then Mason goes to drive off, and Stefan is like walking past, and they both like death stare each other, kind of like Edward and Billy Black in Twilight, you know, when they like are driving past each other and they're like. So then this character Amy, okay, new character introduced, Amy Bradley. So she goes and flirts with Matt, and then Caroline arrives in time and compels Amy and says, hey, why don't you go and find someone single to stalk? And then she walks off, and Matt's super not cool with this. He's like to her, you've been dodging my call for ages, and now you're just gonna rock up and be rude and be the jealous girlfriend, and then just like walks off. And Stefan goes up to Caroline and is like, I saw that, you compelled her. And she's like, yeah, and she deserved it. And he's like, no, Caroline, no one deserves to have their mind messed with. So obviously her jealousy is amplified too now. So Elena's really frustrated because she's looking through all these boxes of stuff and she can't find anything on Katherine, and Damon continues to flirt with her, and then Vanessa and Rick tell them that they found something, and it's a book about werewolves. So Vanessa mentions an Aztec curse called the Sun and the Moon Curse. A little backstory is then told through a voiceover while Mason is in the dungeons, chaining himself up. Troll in the dungeon! Thought you ought to know. Sorry. Yeah, anyway. So Vanessa says that 600 years ago, the Aztecs were plagued by werewolves and vampires who terrorized them until an Aztec shaman cursed them, making vampires slaves to the sun and werewolves servants to the moon. Vampires could only prowl at night and werewolves could only turn on a full moon, and they can't control the transformation. Werewolves' instinct and years of rivalry has hardwired them to hunt their prey of choice, vampires, only killing humans who get in their way. So yeah, it's like the classic old tale where like vampires and werewolves are like arch nemesis. And Damon brings that up again, like, well, I'm a vampire, I've never seen a werewolf. If they existed, I would have heard of it. And Vanessa says, not if they were hunted to almost extinction by vampires to protect themselves, because a werewolf's bite, according to legend, is fatal to a vampire. Ooh, okay. Things are heating up, guys. So yeah, a lot of exposition there, I apologize, but it's important for you to know because this is a big part of this season. So naturally the sun sets and the moon goes up and the watering hole party has turned into a bonfire party, which is starting to slow down. And Caroline goes and talks to Matt, who's really annoyed, saying that he thought they were past her being insecure. And he said that he's explained how he feels about her, and she tries apologizing, saying no more drama, and they leave to go and make out. And then Elena calls Stefan to let her know, like, hey, this may not be true, but just so you know, like, we just found out that the werewolf's bite is fatal to vampires. And then he hangs up and freaks out because he doesn't know where Caroline is. And he tries to call her, but he sees that she left her phone behind, which, like, who just leaves their phone behind? So Mason in the dungeon, troll in the dungeon, is almost chained up, and he's about to start some sort of transformation, but he hears some people above, and it's Tyler and that Ambi, and that Amy Bradley girl. So Tyler's bringing her down to the ruins to get a little freaky, and Mason like freaks out and leaves, and then she double checks if he's single. Remember, she's compelled, so he says yes, and they get to make an out. So above ground, Mason runs to his truck with all of his chains, and he ends up just going inside of his car, and we hear a lot of screaming, bones breaking, crying, just like a lot of intense emotions. Anyways, so Elena asks Vanessa if she knows any research about doppelgangers, and Vanessa says it's typically a living, breathing double of oneself, who usually spends their lives trying to torment those who look like them to undo their lives. But that doesn't quite explain why they look alike. And Damon clearly knows something but doesn't want to tell Elena because of her attitude towards him. Because, you know, he killed her brother. How many times do I have to say that? Like, is he really that surprised that she's mad? So Tyler and Amber are making out, and she stops him, saying that she doesn't really want to do this because she's actually into Matt. He's like, ouch, and then she leaves. So Stefan finds Mason's truck in the foggy forest, and there's like claw marks on the ground, and he looks in through the window, and then boom, there's a wolf just jumps out of the glass and then just runs away. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like it's pretty obvious that Mason Lockwood is a werewolf. Boom. I don't think any of you is surprised. The hinting is pretty obvious. I was just trying to, like, you know, build a little suspense. But yeah, werewolves are the other supernatural creature. Alrighty, so we'll put that little symbol there for you, Mason. So now we have all of our symbols. So Rick, Elena, and Damon are going to leave Duke University, and Rick's outside talking to Vanessa, who like is like, give me a call if you guys need anything. Like, she's really eager, and he's like, trust me, girl, you do not want to be part of this world. And he just also is like, can you please keep it a secret, otherwise? And she's like, Damon will kill me. And he's like, well, yeah. And then she asks him about Isabel, because Isabel is actually like technically a missing person, and he says, well, Isabel became her research.
She wanted to become a vampire, and
I guess that would put a strain on a marriage.
And it's also pretty clear that Rick is starting to finally be able to move on from his wife, because in season 1 he was like wondering where she was, trying to look for her. After he saw her as a vampire, he's like, I don't really want her anymore. So then Damon gives Elena this book on the Petrova family, and she's like, what's that? And he says, it's Katherine. Katherine's real name is Katerina Petrova. So if you guys are ever wondering why I call her Katerina or Katerina, that's because her real name is Katerina Petrova. She's from Bulgaria. And yeah, she just changed her name to Catherine Pierce. And he also tells Elena that she has every right to hate him, but she hated him before and they became friends, and it would suck if that was gone forever. And he asks her, have I lost you forever? But she just thanks him for the book and gets in the car. And Damon, I just think the kind of stuff that you did in the past is not as comparable as killing her brother. Just saying. So while Mason in wolf form is running around in the forest, Caroline and Matt are making out against a tree, and Caroline gets really overwhelmed by the smell and the vibe of Matt's carotid artery and his blood pumping through his body. So when he accidentally cuts himself against a tree, she starts licking the blood out of his hand, and he's like, that's weird. And she's fully drinking out of his wrist, and then she bites him on the neck, drinking his blood, and he's obviously very confused and scared.
Caroline! What the hell? Your face! Get... Oh.
But luckily, before Caroline can drain him of all his blood, Stefan shows up and pulls her off of him. And he tells Caroline that there's a werewolf running around. She's confused, but he doesn't have time to explain. And he's like, we need to run and lead the wolf away from Matt. So they both vamp speed away, and they end up running into Mr. Tyler Lockwood. And they're like kind of briefly talking like, hey, how y'all doing? What you doing here? And then Mason in wolf form shows up out of nowhere and jumps on Caroline's body. And she's trying to pin him away from her so he can't bite her. And then Tyler just screams at the wolf, no. Bad dog. I'm kidding, he doesn't say that. But then Mason gets off of her and runs away. And like they do make full eye contact. And when Mason in wolf form runs away, it's kind of like in a blur with a whoosh, kind of like how the vampires run. So it's not like a regular wolf. He's a cool wolf. He like can speed. But it's confusing because unlike the werewolves in Twilight who look a lot bigger and a little different than regular wolves, the wolves in the Vampire Diaries kind of just look like regular wolves. So some time has passed and Caroline compels Matt to say that he was just like attacked by some animal in the woods and like you're not going to remember what happened, all that kind of stuff. And then he walks away. And I'm not really sure why she didn't just like heal Matt with her blood so that he like could not have the neck wound, but I'm assuming it's probably because like that's what happened with Caroline. She got healed with vampire blood and then Katherine turned her into a vampire by killing her, so they probably don't want more vampires running around. And Caroline's obviously very emotional because she never wanted to hurt Matt, and she's talking to Stefan about if he ever worries about that with Elena, like, and Stefan's like, yeah, but I can't give you advice because, you know, I'm still with Elena even though I should have left, but I just can't, okay? Tyler has found Mason's truck and he's looking in there seeing the chains and stuff, and then he hears a noise and he sees a naked Mason standing behind him covered in dirt, which is weird, like seeing your uncle naked, but he's just like, can you pass me some pants? And he gets dressed and Tyler was like, it was you, wasn't it? And Mason nods. So now Tyler knows about werewolves. Ooh. So Caroline shows up to the grill to talk to Matt and check on him, and he is talking to Amy, who's trying to check on him and see how he's doing, and Caroline gets really pissed off and jealous once again and goes over to her and she's like, seriously, Amber? And then Amber leaves and Matt's like, wow, Caroline, I thought we were over this whole drama, jealous girlfriend thing, and he just can't deal with it, and then they just end up breaking up. So over at the Gilbert house, Rick gives Jenna a fat kiss saying he should have done that earlier. Damon and Elena are on the porch talking and he banter some more about her hating him, and she asks him for the truth about if he knew about Jeremy wearing the ring when he killed him, and he says that he didn't, and that Katherine just like got in his head and he snapped, and he honestly doesn't know what he would have done if Jeremy wasn't wearing the Gilbert ring, which is like not an excuse, but moving on, he does apologize, and she thanks him for his honesty and says that the answer to his question about their friendship is yes. He has lost her forever. And honestly, guys, like, I don't care what you say, I feel like Elena is really real for that. I don't appreciate whenever Damon has his tantrums because something emotional is going on in his life and he gets really destructive and then ends up negatively affecting other people, i.e. killing Elena's brother. Like, what did Jeremy have to do with Katherine and Damon's squabbles? But anyways, Damon turns it onto Elena, saying that she knew that already and that she manipulated him and used him today. And she said, well, there was information that she needed from him. And he says, you know, you have a lot more in common with Katherine than just her looks, as if he's never manipulated anyone before. So the next morning, Caroline wakes up in her bed and she sees who she thinks is Elena sitting on her bed, and it's Katherine, and she's like, try again. And Caroline's obviously really scared because this is the first time seeing Katherine since she killed her.
Don't be frightened. We're gonna have so much fun together.
Oh, thank God. 2 episodes without Katharina? It's too much. So next up we have episode 4 titled Memory Lane, and I love this episode, guys. It's our first flashback episode this season, so let's just get into it. So the episode starts with a flashback scene from 1864 where Mr. Sefusi and Katherine are dancing together at the Lockwood mansion, and Damon's there off to the side staring at them because he's really sad because Katherine chose to take Stefan as her escort instead of him. But Katherine tells Stefan, oh, it's okay, it looks like he found someone to occupy his time. And we see Elena in like present day clothing in this 1864 flashback going up to Damon and like caressing him, which is weird to see because we haven't seen Elena in the flashbacks before because obviously she wasn't alive then. And Damon and Elena leave and Stefan follows them out the door, which leads him into the grill like present day, and he sees Elena waving at who he thinks is him, but it's actually Damon, and they go and play pool. And then Katherine in her 1864 clothing comes up to him and she's like, it hurts, doesn't it? And she caresses his face and says, don't fight it, Stefan. You loved me once, you can love me again. And if you're wondering why all of this was so chaotic, it's because Stefan actually wakes up and it was a bad dream, and he has who he thinks is Elena laying on his chest, and then he vamp speeds out of the bed, realizes it's Katherine.
Katherine.
You have to admit I am getting better at this.
I love her style. And Katherine tells Stefan it was really easy to get into his head. Has he completely forsaken his nature? So yeah, when vampires are not strong enough feeding on human blood, it's easier for other vampires to get into their head, which is like some sort of like supernatural ability that isn't like totally explained. I don't fully understand it, but we rock. So he tries to charge at her, but she throws him away, saying, we both know that I could rip you to shreds and do my nails at the same time. And he asks her why she's back in town yet again. She says for him yet again that she missed him. So Damon vamp speeds and appears in the grill where Elena is doing her homework, and she tells him that she's made herself pretty clear about not wanting anything to do with him. And he's like, okay, and goes to leave and says, I'll see you at Jenna's barbecue. And she's like, wait, how do you know about that? And he's like, it's my idea. I got Rick to organize it because Jenna went to high school with Mason. So I thought a little gathering would be the best way to get to know him. And Elena's like, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm gonna put some silver into Mason Lockwood. So that's like obviously a common thing, is like people think that like silver affects werewolves. So he wants to test that theory, right? So speaking of Mason, he's about to leave the Lockwood mansion for the barbecue when Tyler stops him because he's freaking out about what he saw in the wood. And Mason like so nonchalantly says to him, yeah, I turned into a wolf. It's not gonna happen to you. Relax. Like as if it's no big deal. And he says that Tyler's dad didn't know about this, and neither did he until he triggered the curse. And Tyler asks him how, and he says, ignorance is bliss, my friend, and just bounces. Back at the Salvatore house, Stefan finds Katherine in the living room drinking some blood from Damon's bloodstock. She mentions their discovering of werewolves, but clearly isn't surprised, and Stefan asks her what she knows about them, and she just confirms what we already know, that their bite kills, so stay away from them. And Stefan asks how she knows this, and she reveals that the Lockwoods were responsible for ridding the town of vampires in 1864. Why do you think that? And she also brings up the Founders Ball where we had that flashback, and just to note that was before Damon and Stefan knew that Katherine was a vampire. And then we go back to the flashback where Damon gives a toast to George Lockwood for defending the South. So a vampire takes Katherine aside to inform her that the attacks from the other night weren't vampires, their bodies were torn apart. And Katherine says they'll launch an investigation then, but this town is their home and the vampires are her family, so she won't let anything happen to them. So yeah, just to clarify, Katherine had moved to Mystic Falls in 1864 and she brought her best friend Pearl with her, but she actually turned a bunch of people there into vampires, okay? So that's what she's talking about when she says that the vampires are her family, the same vampires that she sent to a tomb to get burned alive and die, which we will learn about soon. So present day Stefan asks if the Lockwoods are all werewolves, and she clarifies that the werewolf gene runs in the Lockwood family. Doesn't mean they're all wolves. And Stefan asks if it's just the Lockwoods, and Katherine says there are other families too, but they're practically extinct. So yeah, vampires can get turned, whereas werewolves, it has to already be present in their family gene. Oh, those are some rough genes to have. Katherine changes the subject and pulls that picture of her from 1864 that Stefan keeps in his journal and pulls it out and says, why do you keep this? Why not burn it? And she tells Stefan that he didn't come back to town for Elena. He came back to Mystic Falls to fall in love with her all over again. And then he vamp speeds to her, holds her cheek and says, what is it about you that makes me still care? She goes in for a kiss, and just as they're about to, he sticks a vervain dart in her back and locks her up in the dungeon. And down in the dungeon, while Katherine's chained up, he continues asking her why she came back to town, and she continues saying, for you, but he doesn't believe her. It's a really tired story, we're over it at this point. He starts rubbing vervain against her face to torture her into telling the truth, and she goes on discussing the Founders Ball. And we go back to the flashback where Katherine is talking to George Lockwood, saying that she's surprised that he'd come looking for her.
Because I'm a vampire who could kill you in your sleep.
And he asks her how she knows, and she's all like, you think I would move into a town and not know my enemies, George? And he asks her what she wants. In present day at the Gilbert house, Elena thanks Jenna for letting Caroline come to the barbecue because she really needed to take her mind off of the breakup with Matt. Also, Jenna is still pissed at Damon for kissing Elena, where Elena's kind of like, oh, because like obviously he kissed Katherine, but she can't exactly tell Jenna that. So Mason, Rick, and Jenna are all taking shots in the kitchen when Damon arrives and like the vibe shifts, and then Jenna leaves because like she doesn't like him. And over on the porch, Elena leaves Stefan a voicemail, but he's not answering his calls obviously, and Caroline sits with her eating a bunch of chips, saying she's using it to curb the cravings, and she's discussing how horrible it is to fight the urge for blood every minute. And Elena's like, yeah, I know Stefan hates that part. And Caroline's like, yeah, he hates that you're a constant temptation. And Elena, taken aback, is like, really? He said that? And Caroline's like, no, but trust me, it's there. That's why I had to break up with Matt. Back in the Salvatore house dungeons, Katherine is fed up having to do all the talking and says it's Stefan's turn now. She asks him if he pretends to be human with Elena and if that's the appeal, and he says he doesn't have to pretend to be anything with her. That's the whole point. He can be himself. And she asks him if Elena knows that he still loves her, and he says he doesn't. And she says, that's where you're wrong. Don't you remember bringing me home that night? And then we go back to another flashback where Stefan is bringing Katherine back to her room after the ball, and he tells her that he knows he's only known her for a short while, and while he knows that he's in competition with his brother for her affections, he's never met a woman like her. And he says when he looks at her, he sees an angel, which is kind of ironic given that she's a vampire, and that when he touches her body, his entire body ignites. And then he goes and kisses her, and she pulls back.
I am in love with you.
There's just so much you don't know about me, Stefan.
More to learn in love.
She tells him goodnight and goes to go in her room, and he asks if he's upset her, and she says he hasn't, he's just surprised her. And the second that Katherine gets in her room and closes the door, Damon is there, and he just like throws himself on her and starts kissing her. And she pushes him off him and tells him he shouldn't eavesdrop, and he asks if his love isn't enough. And she says that she's tired and he needs to leave, and she compels him to do so. And when she's alone in her room, starts like touching her lips, thinking of Stefan. So it's very clear who she had true feelings with, which is why I'm very confused why she even messed with Damon in the first place. But anyway, so then back in present day, Katherine tells Stefan that he can torture her, but it's never going to change the truth. She never compelled his love. His love was real. And it looks like Stefan is now getting emotional too. And now's probably time to tell you guys that I do kind of ship Katherine and Stefan together. I'm not gonna lie. Look, if you never watched the show, it's hard for you to get why I would like Katherine or support this pairing. But Katherine wasn't always like this. She's been through a lot, but we'll save that for another time, okay? I just like complex characters. I like morally gray characters, but characters who try and change and characters who have been through a lot. And I see that in both Katherine and Stefan, you know? I see it in Damon too, and I love Damon. I just see a lot more depth to Stefan. So Stefan's like sitting on the ground taking this all in, and Catherine's like, yeah, a century and a half of denial must be overwhelming. And he says it wasn't real. He remembers her compelling him, and she says she only did that when he found out what she really was, because he was so scared she had to take away his fear. And he says,
Well, whatever feelings I had back then, all turned to hate.
Love, hate, such a fine line.
but she can wait. And she then tells him that George Lockwood used the vampires to cover his tracks and told the founding families about them, but he was willing to strike a deal with her to rid the town of vampires. So back to the flashback, Katherine is discussing the vampire roundup with George Lockwood, insisting they make sure they do a body count for 27 vampires, and he says that once the flames are ablaze, she must crawl to the exit under the choir loft of the church and he'll set her free. And she insists that he must not be followed because she needs everyone to think that she perished in that fire. And in present day, Stefan's upset with Katherine, saying, you just sold out all those vampires to be burned alive? They were your friends. And she's pretty firm and confident in her decision, saying she practically lit the match without blinking. But there were reasons, guys, don't be fooled. Me justifying everything she does. I support Katherine wrongs, okay? So back at the Gilbert house, Damon puts a pie on the table with like a silver spatula and tells Mason to go first. He's trying to test his silver theory. And Mason just turns around the pie and grabs a piece with his hand instead of the silver serving spoon and says, what can I say? I'm an animal. And then Rick asks Mason if Jenna and him ever dated, and he's like, nah, she was always just stuck in Logan Fell land. And she says that Mason had a bunch of girls lining up to be with him, and Damon's being a little goofy and silly, saying, I kind of always pegged you for a lone wolf. And Mason's like to Damon, yeah, well, I'm sure I wasn't half the lady killer you were. They're both doing these like puns and innuendos to each other. It's really funny. So in the living room, Elena is talking to Caroline, saying that she's really worried about Stefan because she hasn't heard from him. And Caroline says, just relax, Elena, there's nothing worse than a clingy girlfriend. She's like, I'm not being clingy, I'm concerned. And Caroline doesn't want her to go, but Elena says she will. So then Caroline's like, okay, at least let me drive you. So they go to the car, but when Elena gets in, Caroline pops like the little tire, the air goes in, so the tire can go flat. Okay, you can tell I don't know anything about cars. So back in the Salvatore dungeon, Stefan asks Katherine what George got in return for helping her, and Katherine says something he desperately wanted. I wonder what that could be. Stefan finally deduces something and says to Katherine that she was running from something. What was it? But Katherine just says everybody has a past, and she needed hers to stay far away from her. But thanks to Stefan and Damon, her plan almost failed. And Stefan's like, well, we were just trying to save you. And she's like, well, I didn't want to be saved. And he's like, what? So me and Damon died for nothing? And she's like, no, Stefan, you died for love. Back at the Gilbert house, Mason goes into the kitchen where Damon is, and he says they're gonna play Guitar Hero. And Damon's like, well, watch out, buddy, because I rock at that game and you're barking up the wrong tree. And he's like, look, man, enough with the innuendos. You don't think I know what's going on? Look, you're not my enemy, Damon. And Damon's like, you tried to kill my brother. And Mason's like, that was a mistake. I have no control when I shift. And Damon's like, oh, no obedience school. And Mason's like, look, we shouldn't start some age-old feud between us that doesn't apply to us. He's just here for his family because he lost his brother, and he's here for his nephew. So let's be above this. And he leaves, but Damon grabs a silver knife. So clearly he's not willing to make a truce. So Caroline's driving with Elena in her car, and she continues being more and more negative about Elena's relationship with Stefan, and she's talking about how vampire and human coupling won't work. Look what happened between her and Matt, as if they're like the gold standard for what's gonna happen. And then the car finally breaks down with the flat tires, and some time has passed, and it's nighttime now, and Elena's like, when is the tow truck coming? And Caroline's like, weird, it's been ages, I called them. And she's like playing dumb, saying she's gonna call them again. And Elena's like, I'm just gonna call Jenna to come pick us up. And Caroline's like, no, we can't just leave my car. And Elena's like, Caroline, what part of I'm worried about Stefan didn't sink in? And Caroline gets real nasty at this point, saying, what's the rush? Why are you trying to hurry to get to a relationship that's never gonna work? And Elena's like, stop projecting your situation onto me. And Caroline deflects, saying that Elena's gonna be 70 in diapers and Stefan's gonna be smoking hot, and she will never have his children, and she's too maternal not to have his children. And then Elena's like, whoa, where is this all coming from? And she's like, I'm just trying to be a good friend. And she's like, well, try a little less. The girlies are fighting. The girlies are fighting, guys. And then the tow truck finally starts to arrive, and Elena's like, I'm just gonna walk. And Caroline grabs her arm and is like, no, Elena, don't leave me. And Elena's like, you're hurting me. And Caroline's like, don't leave me alone. And she's like, what's wrong with you? And like, Caroline just can't speak, but clearly she's really scared. But then the tow truck driver comes, and Elena's like, it's for her, and she just leaves. So Mason's at the Mystic Grill's parking lot by his car, and Damon shows up, and he stabs him with the silver knife, then starts like going through his car. But Mason just pulls the knife out of his torso and says, you know, he thinks it was werewolves who started this whole myth about silver to fool vampires like him, and says to him, now you've made an enemy. So he tried to give Damon the truce, but Damon just couldn't deal with that and just had to poke the bear. Back in the dungeon, Stefan still doesn't believe Catherine's reasons for being in Mystic Falls, and she tells him that she wants what she wants, and she doesn't care what she has to do to get it. Her list of victims is a long one, and she has no problems adding one more to that, Elena, which obviously stops Stefan, and he gets all up in Catherine's grill with a stake like he's about to stab her, but stops himself, and she says, I guess you don't hate me as much as you thought you did. I don't want you seeing Elena anymore. And if you don't remove her from your life, I will kill everyone in her life while she watches, and then I will kill her while you watch. Ooh, she in her full villain era. And then he chokes Katherine and threatens to kill her with the stake, but she throws him back and breaks out of the chains, and he's really surprised, and she reveals to him that she's been sipping vervain every day for the past 145 years. He caught her by surprise, but she won't let it happen again. It doesn't hurt her anymore, so she's like built up a tolerance to it. But then they hear Elena coming upstairs through the front door, and Stefan freaks, so Katherine stabs him in the leg, and Vamp speeds back upstairs to see Elena. Oh my god, guys, they're finally gonna meet. They're kind of savage for making us wait 4 episodes for the two of them to meet, but let's get into it. So Elena's in the Salvatore house living room calling out for Stefan when she hears some footsteps, turns around, and sees Katherine. And Catherine's energy in the scene, she's just like so intense and sultry and mysterious and scary.
You must be Elena.
It's just like Elena's just frozen looking at her, and Catherine's like just inspecting her, dragging her finger along her. I love this scene. And the first thing Elena says to her is,
How is this possible? How do we look exactly alike?
Catherine says, you're asking the wrong questions. But then Stefan shows up and she disappears. So yeah, it's a very short moment, but Elena and Stefan both gasp and hug. So over at the girl, Caroline's washing her hands in the bathroom, and she looks up in the mirror to see Catherine standing behind her, and she says to her, care to explain how you couldn't follow through with one simple task? And Caroline's like, I tried, but I couldn't exactly kidnap her. And Catherine's like, I just asked you to occupy her, that's all. And it's really clear that Caroline's like very scared of Katherine, and she's like rambling over and over again, saying like, I really think I got to her, blah blah blah. And Catherine's like, yeah, let's hope so, because let's not forget,
I already killed you once. I can easily do it again.
ooh, okay, okay. So yeah, basically that time Katherine showed up in Caroline's room, she's using her to try and keep Elena away from Stefan and to like be her spy. So over at the Lockwood house, Tyler's playing with the moonstone when Mason rocks up, and he quickly hides it, and he brings it up to Mason again, saying that he thinks he knows a place where it might be. And Mason's like, look, this ain't a joke. If you know where it is, just tell me. And Tyler says he will if he tells him how the curse is triggered, and he says he doesn't want to, because if he does, he won't be able to stop thinking about it. And he's like, I'll handle that. He's like, oh, you think you can handle it, tough guy? And then they get in a big tussle, and then eventually Mason tells him, you have to kill somebody, take a human life, and the curse is yours. So yeah, basically the werewolf gene has to be in your family bloodline, and then if you kill a human, take a human's life, then you will turn into a wolf and have to turn into one every single full moon against your will. That's why it's a curse. So Stefan and Elena rock up to the girl, and Stefan goes and grabs them a table, and Elena talks to Caroline, who like apologizes to her, and she's like, no, it's okay, like you're just trying to be a good friend, and everything that she said is right, but it was just hard to hear. But it's clear that Elena's kind of like faking it a little bit. So she then then goes to sit with Stefan, and they have a fight about him spending the whole day with his jealous ex, and how Elena's like not scared of her, and Stefan's like, don't underestimate her. Caroline is eavesdropping with her vampiring, and Damon's at the bar eavesdropping with his vampiring. And then eventually the fight escalates and Elena just leaves. At the Gilbert house, Elena goes in her room where Stefan shows up, and they hug, and they said they hated fighting with each other even if it was fake. So yeah, they were fake fighting because now they're both aware that Caroline was eavesdropping on them, so Katherine clearly must have got to her. And Elena's like, I think Damon was eavesdropping too, should we tell him? And Stefan's like, no, we need everyone to think that we're like fake fighting and like all that kind of stuff. And Elena tells Stefan, wow, Katherine's doing all this just to get him back. And he says, that's not why Katherine's here, no matter what she says. She's never cared about anyone but herself. She's incapable of love. She's here for another reason, which is like pretty harsh. But anyway, while this is happening, we have a scene with this voiceover of Katherine walking outside, and she's like looking up at the moon. And then it cuts to a flashback of Katherine on the night of the vampire roundup, once George Lockwood freed her from the burning church. Alrighty, and I forgot to mention it, but I think it's pretty obvious that Katherine traded her freedom with George Lockwood for the moonstone, which is what he wanted. And he's like, okay, we gotta go, here's the horse carriage. But she's like, okay, I'm coming. And then she runs over to Damon and Stefan, who are lying on the ground after they were shot by their father. Remember, they have vampire blood in their system. And she goes to kiss just Stefan. She doesn't even go over to Damon. She kisses Stefan and tells him, I love you, Stefan. We'll be together again one day, I promise. And then we go back to present day where Katherine's looking at the moon again, because there was a moon in that scene too, like the way it connects. It's just a very adorable scene, and it really like humanizes Katherine and shows like that she has emotions and proves to us that she's not just talking shit. Like, she really truly does love Stefan and is in love with him. Yes, she does go through really crazy measures to try and get back with him, but at the end of the day, that is part of her motivation for being here. Anyway, let's get into the next episode, episode 5, Kill or Be Killed. Alrighty guys, new shirt unlocked, and there was only so many days that I could wear that shirt in a row. But anyway, so the episode starts with a flashback of Mr. Mason Lockwood from a year ago in Florida, when a friend of his is really convinced that Mason hooked up with his girlfriend, and he starts picking a fight with Mason and beating him up really intensely, and Mason's trying to defend himself, and he ends up throwing the guy off of him, and his head ends up hitting the pavement, and this guy dies. And Mason obviously freaks out. That was not his intention. And then we cut to present day Mystic Falls, where Mason has been telling Tyler the story of how he accidentally killed this guy and how it triggered the curse, and how if he doesn't sedate himself and chain himself every full moon, he will kill anything in his path. So he warns Tyler to be careful, as if killing someone is like a common occurrence. He asks for the moonstone once again because a deal's a deal, and Tyler looks in the safe and is like, oh, I don't know where it is. So Mason still wants it, and Tyler is still lying that he has it. So in their Jack and Jill bathroom, Jeremy is talking to Elena about how Tyler might be a werewolf and how they got to find out. And Elena says no, she promised she wouldn't keep stuff from Jeremy, but that doesn't mean that she wants him getting involved in stuff because it's dangerous. She then goes to her room and Stefan shows up. She tells him to shush and closes the door because remember, they're fake fighting and they want everyone to believe it because Katherine wants them to be apart. They're both not happy with the situation and Caroline eavesdropping, and they hate fake fighting, but Elena's like, just promise that it's never going to be real, even if it feels like it is. And Stefan's like, why don't we just have like a little code word, okay? So he says that if he says to Elena, I can't do this anymore, it means he really loves her. And Elena says that if she says to him, okay, fine, whatever, Stefan, it means that she really loves him too. Oh, really cute. Sad, but cute. So over at the Forbes house, Caroline is talking to her mom, and she's surprised that she is following through with going to the Historical Society volunteer picnic. Ooh, that was a mouthful. And it's really clear they don't get along. Caroline's being quite snarky, saying like, oh, you're gonna pretend to be a mother for a day. And Liz asks her what Elena was doing over this morning, and Caroline's like, wait, Elena didn't... Oh yeah, you know, she's just going through some tough times with Stefan, you know, just wanted to talk it through. So that means that Katherine actually visited Caroline again, but we didn't actually get to see it, which is upsetting. I want every bit of Katherine that I can get. And Liz asks Caroline if everything's okay because she seems different lately, and she's like trying to connect with her and stuff. And obviously Caroline's different because she's a vampire, but she doesn't want her mom to know that, so she just shuts down and says to her, there's pretending to be a mother and then there's reality. Let's not push our luck. So yeah, like being bitchy is like Caroline's defense mechanism. So over at this town picnic volunteer fundraiser situation, Carol Lockwood is giving a speech, and it's the opening of a new public park. And basically like throughout the show there are so many like town events. I guess it's a small town, but it's also just a way for the writers to like have all the characters conveniently in one location. So Stefan goes up to Mason Lockwood to offer an apology on behalf of Damon, saying they both have family here, so they should just call a truce before someone gets hurt. And Mason's like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do until your brother stabbed me, so he better watch his back. And Stefan's like, actually you should, because we're stronger than you unless it's a full moon and it's 2 against 1, so you better watch your back. Oh, I love sassy Stefosi.
Thank you, because we don't have enough problems. I don't want peace. Oh, consider it opposite day.
So these two high school students are playing pool over at the Girl. We have Amy Bradley and this other girl named Sarah. So anyway, Sarah's looking over at Jeremy, who's there as well, and she's like, when did he get so cute? And Amy's like, don't bother, he's bad news. Bad boy, shiny toy with the price, you know that I bought it. So Jeremy goes to check on Tyler and see how he's doing after his dad and stuff. And he says that he's just been trying to distract himself from everything. And then Amy and Sarah go up to them and are like, thanks for the text. So it turns out they're gonna go get drunk at Tyler's house while his mom and everyone is at this like fundraiser situation, and he invites Jeremy to go along with. So Mason Lockwood goes up to Sheriff Forbes wanting to be in the council, but she's like, you rejected it, and he's like, that was before, it's not because I didn't believe vampires are real, and you've got two right under your nose, Damon and Stefan Salvatore. Naturally, Liz thinks this is impossible because like she's friends with Damon, and he's like on the council, and he's like killed vampires before, and he's an ally, which I think is really funny that she says that. Like, but Mason's like, think about it, Liz, when did all the vampire attacks start? When the Salvatore brothers moved back to town. I mean, look, he's not wrong for that, it is true. But anyway, he's like, what happens if I can prove it to you? Then would you listen to me? And she's like, let's see. So Elena and Stefan are both across from each other, painting these like park posts staring at each other. And Caroline is with Elena as well. And Elena says she wants to go talk to him, and she tries to stop it, but she goes anyway. And then Damon shows up as well. And they're both eavesdropping on Elena and Stefan with their vamp hearing. They're both so nosy. So Elena asks Stefan if he still cares about Katherine. And he's like, this isn't up for discussion because we have ears on us. And then Damon and Caroline are both like, oh. But Elena keeps going and is like, Stefan, it's like we're the same person. How can you hate her but be in love with me? And he's like, you're reaching, Elena. Don't do that. I'm not Damon. She's like, how about we don't bring up Damon right now? I love that. Just drag Damon while you're in there. And then they do the little code words where Stefan's like, Elena, I can't do this right now. And she's like, okay, fine, Stefan, whatever. But that means they love each other. So over in the Lockwood house, Tyler, Jeremy, Sarah, and Amy are like all getting drunk together. And Sarah's flirting with Jeremy, and then she notices his sketchbook in his bag, and they want to go through it. He's apprehensive at first, but then eventually lets them. And Tyler's like flipping through it, and it's a ton of sketches that Jeremy has done, all of like wolves and werewolves and monsters, and it's like really weird. And Jeremy asks if Tyler still draws, and he's like, yeah, let me show you, it's just in this room over here. So he takes Jeremy to his dad's office, closes the door, and then chokes Jeremy up against the wall, and is like, what are all those pictures about? And Jeremy's like, it's because I know. Ooh. So Damon and Mason have some fake nice small talk. Mason leaves, Stefan shows up, and Damon asks him what's up with the fake fights because him and Elena don't fight. Stefan tells him to drop it, and then Damon takes a drink from this girl's lemonade stand, but when he drinks it, he starts keeling over and choking and coughing, and Liz sees this from afar. So obviously Mason put vervain into the lemonade. I'm just curious about the whole vervain thing. Like, does it have a taste? I really wonder. So Caroline finds Elena really sad sitting on some rocks by a ravine, and Caroline's like, maybe this is for the best. And Elena snaps at her and is like, no, Caroline, none of it is for the best. And then she's like, I'm sorry, you're just trying to be a good friend. But Caroline's like, no, I'm not. And she's about to continue, but then she notices her mom far away on her phone leaving. So she goes to her, and Liz says that she just had a work thing that came up and leaves. And Elena runs over to her, and Caroline's like, something's up. So Stefan and Damon decide that they need to put Mason down like he's a dog because he's threatening to out them, and they see him walking away for trash duty into the forest for some reason, so they go to follow him. And then Caroline and Elena go higher up on the hill so Caroline can hear better. I don't know how that works. Maybe she needs to get higher up so she's away from the rest of the noise so she can really focus, you know? So Damon and Stefan corner Mason in the forest, and then Mason ducks and they both get shot by wooden bullets and fall over. Then Caroline tells Elena what she heard. Then over in the forest, Liz and her deputies show up and inject Damon and Stefan with vervain. Ooh, shit's getting serious. Back in the Lockwood mansion, Tyler asks Jeremy how he knows about all of this, and he says it was from his ancestor's journal where he was talking about the werewolf bloodline in the Lockwood family, and he speaks about how it was weird that Mac got bitten in the forest, in the woods, just when Tyler's uncle Mason came back to town. And he asks if it's true, and Tyler's like, what, if I'm a werewolf? No, not yet. And Jeremy's like, what do you mean? And he's like, you have to murder someone to trigger the curse. And Jeremy asks if his uncle came back to town to tell him this, and Tyler's like, no, he said he's here for this, and shows him the moonstone. Tyler's really spilling all of his secrets. I mean, I guess he's new to the supernatural world, so he doesn't realize he gotta keep this shit on lock. But Caroline and Elena find Mason out in the woods, and Elena asks where Stefan and Damon are, and he says, you don't need me for that. You can just get your little friend to sniff them out. Ooh. Okay. And he's like, does your mother know what you are? I'd be happy to tell her. And Caroline starts going towards Mason, but then he grabs Elena and puts her in a headlock. And he's like, be careful. Neck snap easy around here. Okay, so now we're fully about to murder innocent people. Interesting. So then Caroline says that she can take him, and he calls her bluff. But she speeds, takes him, kicks him in the balls, and then throws him against the tree, and her and Elena run off. Look, I love Vamp Caroline, honestly. As a human, she was forgettable, but as a vampire, she's slaying. So over in the Lockwood ruins in the creepy dungeon under the forest, Liz is shooting Damon with more wooden bullets Tyler's trying to get answers out of him. She's also shooting Stefan, who's like already passed out at this point, because remember, the animal blood makes him weak. He can't heal as fast. And Liz is like on her full interrogation mode, and he's like, but Liz, we were friends. And she's like, our friendship was a lie. So up above, Caroline can hear with her vampiring her mother, and she tells Elena that she's killing them. And Elena wants to go down, but Caroline doesn't, because she doesn't want to expose herself to her mom. But Elena goes anyway. So down below, the deputies hear a noise and go to check it out, but it's Elena who hits one of the deputies over her head with a wooden plank. And then they all start hearing this whooshing, and it's Caroline vamp speeding all over the place to save the day in the most dramatic way possible, okay? So she feeds on one of the deputies, then uses his body to shield herself from the other deputy's wooden bullets. Then she throws him down, and she's like growling and panting with her fangs, red eyes, and she walks towards her mom out of the shadows and says,
Hi, Mom.
honestly, that scene is so iconic. So some time has passed, and Liz and Caroline are like sitting far apart, just like processing. Damon is feeding like a hyena on one of the leftover deputies, and he tells Stefan that he should take some blood too, but Stefan doesn't want to, and Caroline's like, no, he's right, like if there's any time you should break your diet, it should be now. But Elena steps in and says he didn't want it. So the attention is reverted to Liz, who's like not promising she won't tell anyone about this, and it's really hard to watch because Caroline's like, Mom, I'm your daughter, please, he will kill you. And then Sheriff Forbes is like, fine, let him kill me, I can't take this. And Damon goes up to her and gets all up in her face, and he's like, but you were gonna drag it out so painfully. And everyone freaks out, and Damon's like, chill, no one's killing anyone, you're my friend. I just love how Damon always has everyone on edge. So back at the Lockwood house, Jeremy is asking Tyler about the Moonstone, and he says it's supposed to have a lot of supernatural legends attached to it. So then Amy and Sarah barge into the room, and they grab the Moonstone, and they're like throwing it at each other, and Tyler tries to grab it back from them, and then Sarah, who has the Moonstone, ends up running up the stairs, and then Tyler goes up to try and get it from her. They tussle, she ends up falling down the stairs and hitting her head on the ground. Jeremy and Tyler freak because they think that she's dead, and obviously Tyler just told Jeremy how the werewolf curse is triggered, but turns out that Sarah is just playing pretend and she's not actually dead, which is like interesting. Like, she seemed kind of okay considering she like fell down a flight of stairs onto a marble floor, but maybe it's just because of all the alcohol in her system. You know how it numbs you out. She's definitely gonna feel that in the morning. Well, I guess it does show how easy it is to just kill someone. Well, if you have the kind of aggression that Tyler has. Maybe that's why humans who have the werewolf gene naturally have like an aggression. It's like the supernatural entity inside of them trying to push them to trigger the curse, because if you remember from season 1, Mayor Lockwood was very aggressive and very violent. He directed a lot of that towards Tyler, but yeah, it's interesting. So Caroline comes over to the Salvatore house to bring her mother a bag of stuff that she might need, because she has to stay there for 3 days until the vervain is out of her system, so Damon can compel her to forget everything that's happened. So then downstairs, Damon is talking to Liz in the dungeon. She then asks Damon to keep Caroline away from her because she doesn't want to see her, and Caroline is like outside of the cell at this point, and she can hear all of this, and Damon's like, she's your daughter, Liz, and she says, not anymore, my daughter is gone. Oh my god, that's so savage. And Damon's like, you have no idea how wrong you are about that. And he sees Caroline outside, who just walks away upset with Elena. Stefan follows as well, but then he gets distracted by the smell of Damon's deep fridge of blood, and he goes to look inside, and Elena comes back and sees him holding a blood bag, and she asks what he's doing, and he says Katherine took a little vervain every day and built up a tolerance. He thinks he can do the same with blood and learn to control it. I mean, that's not really how addiction works, but like, go off, I guess, King. So of course, with past events and Stefan's blood freak out last season, Elena is not so happy with this idea, and Stefan feels it's the only way to stop Katherine because she's stronger than him, and drinking human blood is the only thing that will help him. And she asks if he's being serious or pretending to fight because she can't tell anymore, and he says, no, Elena, this is real. And then she runs off. Trouble in paradise, except this time it's real. So Caroline's sitting on the couch in the Salvatore house living room, and Elena offers to take her home, but Caroline says she can't because she's scared. And Elena's trying to comfort her, saying, you can tell me why. And Caroline tells her because Catherine's going to be there, and she tells her how she's been controlling her. Elena says that she knows, and she's been so mad at her, but then she tried to understand why Caroline would do this, and she asks her, who did Katherine threaten? And Caroline says, Matt. She threatened Matt. And no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I feel really bad for Caroline. Like, her whole world has been turned upside down. Her mother hates her because of what she is now, which was not her control. She was turned into a vampire against her will. Her boyfriend broke up with her because her emotions are dysregulated and he doesn't know why. And this evil 500-year-old vampire is using her, manipulating her, threatening her, and ruining all of her friendships. My girl Caroline is in the trenches. At the Lockwood house, Mason leaves Liz a voicemail asking if she's okay because he never ended up seeing her the rest of the day. And then Tyler shows up saying he almost killed a girl today and it was an accident, but she's okay. But for a split second, a part of him wanted her to die. Ooh, okay. Well, like I said, that's probably that supernatural thing inside of him. I'm not going to believe that he's some psycho.
Look, whatever this is inside me, I don't want any part of it.
I know.
So then he gives Mason the moonstone. So now Mason has the moonstone if you're keeping track of it. So after Elena helped put Caroline to sleep, she's about to leave the Salvatore house when she bumps into Damon and says to him that what he did for Caroline's mom, that's the Damon that was her friend. She's about to leave, but Damon stops her and says, Stefan didn't drink the people blood, if you're wondering, but he needs it. And deep down, you know that. So then she goes and finds Stefan in the library, and she tells him that if he wants to try this, then she wants to be there for him. And then she pricks her hand with a dagger and holds it out to him, saying it's her and him, always. He has a small drink from Elena's hand and manages to control himself. And then, interestingly enough, after that, they both kiss. So did she taste her blood in his mouth? You nasty. So then it's nighttime in the forest and we cut to Mason getting into someone's car. And guess who's there but none other than Miss Katherine Petrova. And then we cut back to the flashback from the opening scene where Mason accidentally killed that guy a year ago in Florida. And Katherine comes through a crowd and comforts him, and while she's hugging him, it's clear that she instigated the situation because she's smiling over his shoulder. Then we go back to present day where Mason goes to kiss Katherine and she's like, what was that stunt today with the Salvatore brothers?
I told you to stay away from them.
Why do you even care?
And she's like, no, I just don't want you getting distracted. I want you to find the moonstone. But then he gives her a look, she realizes he got it, and they make out. So yeah, Mason and Katherine sitting in a tree. I better add a red string there, shouldn't I? So yeah, Catherine's been involved with Mason for a year. She's the one who instigated him triggering his werewolf curse. She's the one who wants him to get the moonstone. Do we see how she's behind all of this already? And it just gets a lot more hectic from here. So without further ado, let's get into episode 6, Plan B. So I just went and got my nails done. New nails. Who dis? Look how beautiful they look. They are like a watercolor blue sort of vibe. Not sure if the camera's picking it up, but I'm obsessed. But anyway, that's besides the point. So the episode starts with a really cool scene. It kind of shows us the parallels between Elena and Stefan's relationship and Katherine and Mason's relationship, which by the way, I did add a red line. So both couples are in bed. Katherine is staying at a bed and breakfast, and Mason won't tell her where the moonstone is because he says he doesn't trust her or anyone. And he says after they get the moonstone, what's going to happen? And she says they'll live happily ever after. So he is extremely gullible and doesn't realize that she's just using him. And then Stefan drinks a drop of Elena's blood and reassures her that they'll get through the day because they're worried about Katherine finding out about them, and they're also going to this like Lockwood party event where Mason's gonna be, and he just tried to kill Damon and Stefan, so it's a bit orkies.
I love you, Stefan. You know I love you.
I love you too.
So Jeremy shows up to the Salvatore house to tell Damon what he has learned about the Lockwood, so Damon lets him in. And then over at the Lockwood house, everyone is setting up for this charity masquerade ball, which is going to be the next episode. And Jenna goes to invite Stefan to come over for dinner that night, and he says that him and Elena aren't really talking at the moment. They're going through a rough patch. And Jenna's like, well, that's not what it sounded like this morning. Ooh, so she knows, but she's like, I won't tell. And outside we see Bonnie, who we haven't actually seen for the past 2 episodes, so exciting to see her again. In the first few seasons, they like go a few episodes without her, and it's really sad because I love Bonnie. But she's looking around, and Elena tells her that Caroline is not coming and that she's eventually gonna have to talk to her. And Bonnie's like, could you make it a little bit less obvious whose side you're on? And Elena's like, there's no sides, Bonnie, you're both my friends. And she's like, yeah, but ever since Caroline became a vampire, we barely ever see each other. I didn't think that losing Caroline as a friend would mean I would lose you too. But then Elena wants to take Bonnie somewhere quiet to talk. So down in the Salvatore dungeons, Caroline's with her mom, and her mom's like ignoring her because she's devastated that her daughter's a vampire. And she's like, it's not like I died or anything. And her mom's like, are you dead? And she's like, well, yes and no. And she's like, how is this even possible? And then Rick shows up to give Damon some more information from Isabel's research about the sun and the moon curse, and we learn that the werewolf part of the curse is sealed with the moonstone, and Rick thinks that Mason is trying to break the curse with the moonstone, so Damon tells Jeremy to go get it from Tyler. So yeah, it seems like Jeremy's like over Damon trying to kill him because he wants to be part of the supernatural gang. It like gives him purpose or something. Anyway, so Elena's sitting somewhere private with Bonnie, filling her in, basically saying that her and Stefan are fake fighting because Catherine's been trying to break them up, and like Caroline just got caught in the middle. And Bonnie's like, you know, I just didn't even know that you guys were fake fighting to begin with. And Elena says she doesn't want to keep stuff from Bonnie, but she's made it pretty clear where she stands with the vampires. And Bonnie says she knows where she stands and where Elena stands, but where do they stand? It's so dramatic. Anyway, so outside the Lockwood house, Mason sees Stefan and is like really fake nice to him and stuff, but also like, oh, I didn't think I would see you again. Because remember, Mason tried to have him killed. And he asks where Sheriff Forbes is, and Stefan says she's fine, but he's gonna have to do his own dirty work from now on. As Mason's walking away, he bumps into a Bonnie who gets like a really weird feeling from him, and Stefan notices, so he goes to talk to her, and she says that when she felt him, she got like some sort of vision, and it was him in bed with Elena. And Stefan's like, no, Elena would never do that. Bonnie, you saw Mason with Katherine. Anyway, so Elena's watching them from afar her because she's keeping a safe distance from Stefan. And then Damon shows up saying he's looking for his little bro, and by the way, can she keep her little bro away from him? And then he leaves and Jeremy shows up and Elena's like, what are you doing with Damon? And he's like, well, Damon and me. And she's like, no, there is no Damon and you. There's only who Damon is using, and they usually end up dead. Well, yes. And she tells Jeremy that whatever's going on, she wants him to stay away from Damon. And he says,
I don't really care what you want, Elena. It's because of you that I'm in this mess in the first place, so sorry, you don't really get to tell me what I'm gonna do.
ooh, he is savage. Now, see, I'm struggling with the logic in this situation because no one forced Jeremy to work with Damon to find out more about the werewolves. That's just his own obsession. So Stefan informs Damon about the Katherine Mason situation, and Damon informs Stefan about Jeremy getting the moonstone from Tyler. So Matt's off whining about Caroline to Tyler, and Tyler calls Caroline an erotic bitchy little twit. Okay. Matt leaves, and then Jeremy goes and talks to Tyler and says that he did more research about the moonstone and asks if he can check it out. But Tyler informs him that he gave it to his uncle. And up above, the Salvatore brothers are using their vamp ears to eavesdrop on the situation, and then they both get Bonnie and pull her aside and ask her if she can grab Mason again to see if she can get another vision from him.
My visions don't work like that. I don't get to ask questions.
How inconvenient.
But then Damon says, what about that witchy woo-woo thing you do to my head? What is that? And she says that it's giving his brain an aneurysm, but because of his supernatural healing, she does it over and over again. And she says that it would work on any supernatural being, so they want her to do it to Mason to weaken him so that they can, like, basically kidnap him and question him. She's apprehensive at first, but eventually when they convince her that this will help keep Elena and everyone else protected, she ends up agreeing to it. So let me get this straight, Bonnie Bon. You can talk to these vampires who you have no relationship with, but you can't talk to this vampire who's your best friend. Okay, I see how it is. Anyway, so a bit of time passes and Bonnie's like struggling to get something into a moving truck. Mason comes to help her and she fries his brain, and then Damon and Stefan load him up in a truck and take him away. So in the Salvatore dungeons, Caroline's informing her mom about vamp life, and she seems to be coming around to the whole idea, considering that, you know, Caroline wants to be good and she doesn't actually intend on wanting to kill anyone. And then in the living room, Bonnie is trying to help Damon chain Mason to this chair, and she has like her hands on his head trying to see if she can like tap into his head and find anything. And she sees a well, so she says that the moonstone is in a well. And he thanks her and she leaves, and then Damon slaps Mason across the face to wake him up. Caroline finds Bonnie on her way out, and it's really awkward because remember, they haven't really been talking since the whole incident in episode 2 where Bonnie saw Caroline kill that guy, and Bonnie's asking her if she remembers where that well is that they used to play it as kids, and Caroline says over on the edge of the Lockwood property, and she offers to go with her, and at first Bonnie's like no, but then she takes a moment and is like, actually yeah, sure, like you can come with me. So she's extending that olive branch, which we appreciate. So over at the Lockwood house, Matt is asking Elena questions about where Caroline is, and Elena's just like coming up with BS because she doesn't want to tell him the truth. And then Tyler asks Stefan where Mason is, and then he lies as well. And then Stefan leaves without telling Elena where he's going, so just like a lot of lying going around. So back in the Salvatore house, Damon is torturing Mason with a hot iron poker that he stuck in the fire, and he is questioning him about Katherine, and Mason doesn't want to answer. And then Jeremy shows up saying he found some stuff in Rick's research about this herb called wolfsbane, which could be toxic towards werewolves. So then Damon grabs the wolfsbane and wants to test his theory on Mason and starts rubbing it along his face, which starts burning and sizzling him, similar to how Vervain does to vampires. And he's asking him, why is Katherine here? And then he finally spits out, she's here with me. Why, you jealous? And then David says, oh, how rude of me. I didn't offer you anything to eat. And then he shoves the wolfsbane into Mason's mouth, and he starts like gurgling and like spitting out blood. It's really intense. So after a text from Bonnie, Stefan finds the well where the moonstone could be on the edge of the Lockwood property, and within a few seconds Elena shows up, so he clearly walked there. I don't know why he wouldn't have just used his vamp speed, but Stefan catches her up to speed, and then he jumps down the well, but when he lands in the water at the bottom, his skin starts to sizzle and burn, and he screams and passes out. Elena tries to like pick up some change, but they're too heavy for her, but luckily Caroline vamp speeds and shows up just in time to help her. She's like trying to pick up the chains and propel Elena down into the well so she can get Stefan. Bonnie shows up as well. So after being propelled to the bottom of the well, Elena sticks Stefan into the loop of the chain and they pull him back up, but Elena doesn't want to go back up yet because she wants to look for the moonstone, so she starts scurrying around in the water. But oh my god, this scene, I'm sorry. I have a very deep phobia of snakes, and in this scene, these water snakes start slithering and hissing towards her. She starts screaming, throwing the snakes off of her, but she finds the moonstone box, and she jumps in the chain, and Caroline pulls her back up, and when she gets out the water, Stefan looks fried, like someone threw acid on him, and Elena starts feeding him her blood to like bring him back to life. So yeah, like this scene was very intense. Not only was there Vervain in the well to deter a vampire from going in there, and they also put snakes in there, which freaked out Elena, and like luckily she didn't get bit, but wow, like Mason was really not messing around. He's like, you're not getting that moonstone. So back in the Salvatore house living room, Damon is still torturing and questioning Mason, asking why Katherine wants to have the moonstone and break the curse, and Mason says for him, and he's like, why would she want to do that? And he says, because she loves me. And then Damon bursts out laughing and says, oh, I get it. you're stupid. And he's like, Katherine doesn't love you, you idiot. She's using you, which is very true. Damon could tell. And then Damon tells Jeremy to leave because he's getting really squeamish about all the torturing, but Jeremy doesn't want to leave. And then Damon like grabs Jeremy really aggressively and pushes him down. And he's like,
The guy's a werewolf. He killed me the first chance he got. So you suck it up or leave.
and Jeremy chooses to leave. So then Damon tells Mason that Katherine will only rip out his heart. So why doesn't he do it for him? And he does exactly that. He sticks his hand into Mason Lockwood's chest cavity, rips out his heart, and the man dies. Another one. R.I.P. to the wolf you used to be. Bye-bye, Uncle Mason. So it's nighttime now and Caroline's back in the dungeons talking to her mom, recounting her day and like how successful it was and how like Bonnie was like being nice to her and stuff. And she thinks that her mom is judging her by her face, but Liz just says that she's just really surprised and happy about the strong, confident person that Caroline's becoming, and she feels like she doesn't have to take her memory away because she won't tell anyone.
I'll never do anything to hurt you.
We never talk like this, and today meant so much to me.
Me too.
But Caroline gets really emotional and says she knows she can trust her, but she's never gonna trust them. And then she compels her mother and takes away her memory, and it's just so sad. Like, I got so emotional because like the progress that they made in their relationship this day, which is usually strained, is just completely wiped. So upstairs, Damon is wrapping up Mason's body in some tarp, and Stefan shows up and gives him the moonstone. And then Damon's going through Mason's phone and calls the last caller, even though Stefan tells him not to because he thinks it's gonna be Katherine, and he's like, don't provoke her. And lo and behold, it is Katherine, who's not very pleased to hear that Damon has killed Mason and that he has the moonstone. And he just kind of like taunts her in general. And Damon thinks he's got the upper hand by ruining her plan, but then Catherine's like, really, Damon? Did you honestly not think I would have a plan B and then a plan C?
Then a plan D, and you know how the alphabet works, don't you? Send my love to Stefan.
Oh, that was so iconic. Everything she says is iconic. But Damon, when are you gonna learn not to poke the bear? So over at the Gilbert house, Elena comes downstairs where Rick and Jenna were cooking dinner. She notices Jenna talking on the phone and she asks Rick who she's talking to. He doesn't know, but then Jenna gives the phone to Elena and boom, it's Katherine on the phone. She asks Elena if she enjoyed her little rendezvous with Stefan this morning, and she says, when are you gonna learn, Elena? I will always be one step ahead of you. And she tells her it was only so easy to get into her house, replace Jenna's vervain perfume and tea. And Elena's in complete disbelief, and Katherine reveals that Jenna has been her spy for the past couple of days, and she let Jenna know that maybe the world would be a better place if she just. And then Elena turns around and Jenna stabs herself with a knife in the stomach, and she's like, Jenna, no. So then we cut to the hospital where Elena is talking to Jeremy, saying that the doctors said that Jenna got lucky and that she's gonna make it. And Jeremy asks why Katherine would hurt Jenna, and Elena says she's just trying to send a message that she could get to anyone. And Jeremy gives her a hug and comforts her while she's crying, saying that Katherine, she's gonna pay for this. So over at the Lockwood house, Tyler asks his mom where Mason is, and she tells him that Mason actually left town, and she would hope that he would stay for a bit longer, but this is just his way. He comes and goes. That's because Damon actually sent her a text from Mason's phone saying that he's leaving town and was going to send for his stuff, so he's covering up his tracks. So Elena shows up to the Salvatore House library where Stefan turns around by the fire and he already is crying, and he has looked sadder than ever before. So he tells Elena that he is so sorry for what happened, and Elena's like, we were stupid thinking we could sneak around and not get caught, and now Jenna's in the hospital because of us, and Jeremy could be next, all because we didn't listen to Katherine, all because we're together. He says he knows what she's going to say to him, and she's like, well then let me say it. And oh my god, like in this, I can't deal with Stefan's face in this moment, trying not to cry even more. And she tells him, Stefan, I've been so selfish because I love you, and I know you love me, but it's over. And he can like barely even talk.
Stefan, it has to be. No, Stefan.
And gives him one last kiss and leaves. Oh my god, I can't. Just give Paul Wesley his Oscar already, or Emmy, whatever you do for TV shows. On Elena's way out of the house, Damon stops her and says it's his fault. He riled Katherine up and like he wasn't thinking, and she tells him that it doesn't matter. Katherine won. Speaking of the devil, we then cut to Katherine, who is in her room pulling someone because she says she needs a werewolf and she lost the one that she had. And she tells the person to repeat what they're gonna do to help her get a new one. And then the camera flips and it's Matt, and he says, I'm gonna pick a fight with Tyler Lockwood, and I'm not gonna stop until he kills me. So that's the end of the episode. I mean, if you care about Matt's life, maybe this is a big deal for you, but like this is just another Tuesday for me. So moving on to episode 7, the final episode for this video that we'll be discussing, and my favorite episode of the season, probably. Episode 7, Masquerade. So the episode starts with Caroline telling Damon and Stefan the rundown of what happened earlier. She was at the grill because she wanted to go ahead and stalk Mr. Matt, but she ended up going to the bathroom where Katherine showed up pretending to be Elena, saying that she wants to meet Damon and Stefan at the Masquerade ball that night because she wants them to give her the moonstone, because if they don't, she's gonna rip apart this town till it rains blood. And Stefan thinks she wants to meet in a public place because killing Mason really threw her off, but Damon thinks that she's out of tricks, and Stefan thinks they shouldn't underestimate her. But suffice it to say, Damon's like, nah, let's just kill the bitch. And Stefan's like, no, you're not. because I'm gonna kill her. Ooh, okay, they're really fed up. So Elena, Jeremy, and Matt bring Jenna home from the hospital, and she thinks that she walked into a knife, so obviously the compulsion is at play. And Jeremy's in the kitchen asking Elena what they're gonna do about Katherine, and Elena says nothing. Katherine hurt Jenna because she was with Stefan, and now they're not together anymore, so she's not gonna hurt her again. And Jeremy says that you're being naive, and you know it. So Katherine has the owner of the bed and breakfast she's staying at, Miss Flowers, bring in all of her shopping into her room, and then she leaves. And then she hears someone behind her in the room, so she vamp speeds towards them and pins them against the wall. And it turns out that this person is her friend, who's a witch, who she asked to come to town to see her. Her name is... her name is Lucy. So Bonnie shows up where she sees Caroline, the Salvatore brothers, and Rick all playing with a bunch of weapons. She sees the whole gang and they inform her that they plan on killing Katherine at the Masquerade ball. So back at the bed and breakfast, Katherine is straightening her hair and her friend asks what she's doing. And she said that she is impersonating her dull as a dishwasher doppelganger, Elena.
She has the worst taste.
Except in men.
So basically Lucy has come to town to help Katherine get the moonstone, and she asks Katherine what she wants with it, and she realizes that Katherine wants her to break the curse. But what she really needs is backup, because she can't imagine that Damon and Stefan are going to give it over without a fight. So back at the Salvatore house, Bonnie tells Stefan it's too risky going after Katherine, but he says that she knows him, he's not going to try anything in a crowd full of innocent people, so that'll give him the upper hand. And Bonnie says that she could possibly do a spell to isolate Katherine in a room and trap her, like that spell that was done for the tomb. In the Goodwood house, while she's walking him out, Elena asks Matt if he wants to stay over for pizza and a movie night, and he said he has to go to the Masquerade ball, and isn't she? And she says no, with everything going on with Stefan, she's not going to go. And Matt's being really vague, saying that he has to go because he has something to do, but he can't talk about it. So at the Salvatore house, Stefan confirms he wants Rick to stay home with Elena that night to make sure that she doesn't go anywhere near the Masquerade ball.
Tonight, Katherine gets a stake through her heart.
So it's finally the night of the charity Lockwood Masquerade Ball. Katherine arrives with Lucy, and she bumps into Matt, who thinks that she's Elena at first, but then she like kind of triggers that compulsion and is like, you really know what you need to do? And he's like, I'm gonna pick a fight with Tyler Lockwood until he kills me. Just kind of like confirming that he knows what's going on. But then when she snaps him out of it, he's back to thinking that she's Elena. So the Salvatore brothers arrive looking for Katherine, double checking that neither of them are gonna hesitate when it comes to killing her. And then later on we see that Tyler is in his dad's office, even though his mother asked him to make sure it was off limits, and he's taking shots and getting drunk with Matt, Sarah, and Amy. And then Bonnie and Jeremy arrive, and they go upstairs to that secluded room so that Bonnie can cast her spell to trap Katherine in it, and Jeremy's laying out a bunch of weapons. They're also talking about Bonnie's knowledge of the Grimoire and like how many spells she's learned, because Jeremy's curious, but she says she doesn't want to learn too much because she doesn't really enjoy this. But Jeremy thinks it's like really cool that she's a witch, and she's like, no, it's actually really dangerous. It never ends well for people like me, which is true because in the show they actually call witches servants of nature. But Jeremy asks her if she feels that way, why does she still get involved? And she says because she doesn't want anyone else getting hurt, and she just doesn't know how to stay out of it. So Elena's on the couch eating pizza with Jenna, who's recovering, asking if she should save a slice for Jeremy, and she says no, he went to that Masquerade ball. And then she goes over to Rick being like, what's going on? Like, people have been ignoring me all day, and Jeremy's now going to this ball. He hates that stuff. And she tries to coax the truth out of Rick, who like doesn't want to give it to her, and she's like, fine, I'll just go there myself and see what's going on. And he eventually fesses up like, okay, you know, Stefan just wanted me to keep an eye on you in case Katherine shows up to the Masquerade ball. And she's like, wait, Stefan's going to that? He hates that stuff. He only ever went there for me, further fueling her suspicion. So yeah, if I didn't make it clear enough, they're obviously trying to keep this a secret from Elena because she has this like martyr complex where she doesn't want anyone to get hurt, and they're like, okay, well, if she knew about this, she would try to put a stop to it. But back at the Masquerade ball, Bonnie and Jeremy walk downstairs to let the Salvatore brothers know that the room is ready. But Bonnie like feels a supernatural entity, and then she walks to that witch who is Katherine's friend Lucy and taps her on the back, and Lucy turns around and Bonnie's like, do I know you? And she's like, no, I'm a +1, but like it's a fun party. So she can feel that witchy energy. So then we cut to outside where Stefan notices a sexy Katherine from afar, and then when he turns around, she just magically appears there, and she's eating a strawberry seductively, asking him to dance with her. And at first he doesn't want to, and then she's like, okay, well, who should I kill? Ooh, him. Oh, she looks tasty. So then eventually he does dance with her, and they're like making small talk, and he says he doesn't want anyone to get hurt tonight, and she says he gives her the moonstone, then nobody will. And he says he doesn't have it on him, but she can come with him to go get it, but she's not falling for that, and she's like, why don't you go fetch it for me, and I'll wait here and try not to kill anyone. Stefan's getting real cocky, saying it's his way or she doesn't get it. But then they're interrupted by Amy Bradley, who's asking where Matt is because she can't find him, but then she notices Katherine, who she thinks is Elena, and she's like complimenting her dress, and Katherine's like, oh, thank you, I love your necklace. Oh, it's crooked. And she goes behind her to fix it, and then grabs her and
Paralyzed from the waist down. And dead. The moonstone, Stefan.
TikTok.
Honestly, so slay. That was like such a savage death. Like out of all the deaths, the way she just did it there on the dance floor where there were tons of people around and she just did it from behind her, like clap, clap. I didn't even know you could do that. So goodbye, Amy Bradley. So Rick and Jenna are laying on the couch and Elena tells them that she's gonna go to bed, but she actually grabs the car keys and sneaks out the front door to go to the Masquerade ball. So Stefan's freaking out to Damon, saying that he has the body of Amy in his trunk and like he didn't want anyone to get hurt. And Damon thinks he wants to back out and he's like, no, we've waited too long for this. She has to die tonight. Look what she's done to us, Stefan. This is just collateral damage. Gives him a bit of a pep talk, basically. So outside, Jeremy's flapping his gums to Bonnie about like what spells he would learn if he was a witch, saying he would learn how to like ace test. He would learn a sex spell. He's like being all over the place. Then he like asks her to dance and she blurts out no. And he's like, oh. But then they get a text from Damon saying now. So let's move on to the next phase of the plan. So Lucy shows up to Katherine saying she didn't tell her there was another witch here, and that changes everything because no one is supposed to know she's involved. And Katherine's like, this changes nothing because you owe a favor to a dear friend whom you wouldn't want to lose now, would you? So she's clearly manipulating Lucy. But then Jeremy shows up to Katherine pretending that she's Elena, and then when Lucy leaves, he speaks to her like she's Katherine, saying that he has a message from Damon and Stefan to meet them at the edge of the lake where they have the moonstone. And she's like, why are you their little messenger? And he says, because I'm not afraid of you. And she's like, oh, you Gilbert man, so brave. By the way, how's John doing? Were they able to sew his fingers back on? I love how antagonistic she is. She just does it with like a bit of flair, a little oomph. So anyway, then Jeremy walks away and he's pulled behind some bushes by Elena, who's like, what the hell is going on? Back inside the Lockwood house, Caroline is watching a drunk Matt walk away with Tyler and Sarah. And then she gets a text from Jeremy saying, your turn. So she walks upstairs through all these secluded rooms where Katherine finds her and pins her against a wall asking where Damon and Stefan are, because Jeremy is trying to lure her to the lake and what's going on. And she like chokes Caroline and like tries to torture a bunch of information out of her. And eventually she tells her that they're trying to kill her, but Katherine doesn't care and just asks where the moonstone is. And Caroline says it's with Bonnie, and Katherine makes her take her to where Bonnie is, so she does. And Katherine goes in the secluded room and is like, where is she? And she turns around and Caroline is laughing and she's like, wow, I didn't think I would be able to fool you. And then Katherine tries to like vamp speed towards her, but she can't because there's like an invisible force field like the tomb, because of the spell that Bonnie did to trap her in the room. And then Stefan is behind her like, hello, Katherine. And Caroline's like, goodbye, Katherine. And she walks away. She really thought she did something. So outside, Elena is talking with Bonnie and Jeremy, saying that they're crazy and they can't do this because how could she live with herself if something happened to them? But Jeremy's like, Elena, this is a lot more than you at this point. Katherine has to be stopped. I mean, that is true. Like, Elena, I don't know if I would say she's controlling, but like, if they want to kill Katherine, like, let them. Like, she's affecting other people. So back in that room, Katherine is taunting Stefan with his stake, like, you won't kill me. And he's like, no, but he will. And then Damon has like a crossbow and shoots a wooden stake into Katherine's back. And then the scene quickly cuts back to Elena, who screams out in pain and she's gasping. And then her back, the same place where Katherine was shot, starts bleeding. And then we go back to the room where Stefan stabs Katherine in her arm, which then happens to Elena too. And then Bonnie realizes what's happening and tells Jeremy that she's linked to Katherine and he must go get them to stop. So Jeremy runs upstairs to do so, but Damon and Stefan continue fighting with Katherine, and Katherine does kind of slay. She's like about to stake Damon when Stefan grabs her and holds her down, and then just as Damon is about to stake Katherine, Jeremy runs in and says, stop. Everything you're doing to her is hurting Elena. They let go of Katherine, both gagged, and she jumps up saying, do you think you're the only ones with a witch on your side? And something tells me that my witch is better than yours. And Stefan tells Jeremy to go make sure that Elena's okay, and Katherine's like, yeah, why don't we all go make sure that poor little Elena's okay if I just apply a little pressure? And she like cuts herself in the hand with a wooden stake, which then Elena feels and they knock it out of her hand.
Bonnie and her. I can't break the spell, Elena. I'm sorry. But I can try to take some of the pain away, okay? Okay.
So yeah, this is obviously affecting Elena a lot more than Katherine because she's a vampire with supernatural healing abilities, whereas Elena is a human who's gonna feel all of this. I can't even imagine how weird that would be. Like, you're not feeling or anticipating or seeing the violence happening towards you, but like you just feel it. It would be so weird. So Katherine's toying with them, about to stab herself in the gut, which is really gonna hurt Elena, and they both try and stop her, and then she's like, so about that moonstone. And then we cut to Jeremy, who tells Bonnie that Katherine has a witch who linked her to Elena, and then Bonnie's like, that must have been that woman I saw earlier. I gotta go find her, put pressure on Elena's wounds. So she just like ditched Elena in her time of need anyway. And Jeremy tries to give Elena his magic ring to help her, and she's like, no, Jeremy, what I need right now is to know that you're safe. I'm like, girl, girl, stop being such a martyr and just take the ring. You literally have like 2 or 3 stab wounds. So back in the room, Katherine says, ooh, the 3 of us back together like good old times. The brother who loved me too much and the brother who didn't love me enough. And then Damon says, and the evil slut vampire who only loved herself. He's really dumb pissed. He keeps calling her a slut for no reason. Anyway, so they keep antagonizing each other and Stefan calls it out. So Katherine asks for the moonstone again and Stefan asks what she wants to do with it. And then she pivots the conversation to Elena asking if she enjoys having both of them worship at her altar. And Stefan's like, stop Katherine, you're being desperate. And she's like, doesn't it bother you that your brother's in love with your girlfriend? And Stefan tells her to stop, but she keeps taunting him like, what? You gonna hurt me? Let's face it, Stefan, anything you do to me, Elena will feel. But then she directs her attention to Damon and is like, better yet, Damon, why don't you kiss me? She'll feel that too. But Stefan pivots the conversation again, saying this whole Mason situation has him confused. Why would she want a moonstone to break the curse that could help end all vampires? What's in it for her? And David says to her, yeah, I'm sorry about your pet wolf. You should have kept him on a tighter leash. And she's like, I'll have to remember that for next time. Mason's not the only wolf in town. Speaking of the other wolf, we then cut to Tyler, who's with Matt and Sarah. Matt is getting belligerently drunk and he's getting messy, okay? He's pouring vodka all over the floor and Tyler tells him not to do that. And he grabs a picture frame of Tyler with his dad and his mom. And he's like, we're just having fun. Looks like your dad wants a drink. And then he like pours the vodka on the picture frame and Sarah's like, dude, that's not cool, like his dad's dead. And he's like,
Remember how your dad used to slap you around? Are you kidding? Just having fun.
and he's like, dude, you better stop. And then he smashes the picture frame and gets into a fight with Tyler. In another area, Caroline hears this with her super vamp hearing and she goes over there and then tries to stop Matt and realizes he won't, so she knocks him out. And then she goes to check on him, and while she's doing that, Sarah picks up like a letter opener and says in a weird monotone voice, if Matt fails, then I can't. And then she goes to stab Tyler, but Caroline warns him to watch out, and he like pushes her and she hits her head against the desk and lands on the floor. And well, I mean, she did. Okay, bye-bye, Sarah. So Tyler's freaking out naturally, and Caroline's like, calm down, Tyler. And he's like, no, you don't get it. And then he like falls on the ground and like he has this like screaming situation.
Tyler, what's happening?
And he looks up and his eyes are amber. So what does that mean, ladies and gents? That means that Tyler has triggered the werewolf curse. There's your little werewolf symbol, Tyler. Welcome to the club. Hopefully you don't suffer the same fate as your uncle. So at this point, Katherine and Salvatore brothers have been stuck in this room for a while. They're just trying to pass time.
We could play charades.
And Stefan has a revelation that Katherine used the moonstone to bargain her life with George Lockwood back in the day. And she says it would have worked, except people found out she wasn't in the tomb thanks to Damon. And she says, have I mentioned how inconvenient your obsession with me has been? And he's like, you and me both, honey. I just love the banter between Katherine and Damon. It's like 2 divorcee parents who hate each other. But Stefan's still stuck on this revelation and says, why do you need the moonstone back now? In 1864, you faked your death. What were you running from? But Katherine pivots and says, in 1987, you were in Chicago at a concert with that wench Lexi. And he's surprised and she's like, did you really think I wouldn't check up on you over the years?
You were watching Bon Jovi and I was watching you.
So she's like flirting with Stefan and then like being mean to Damon. She is messy boots galore. So downstairs, Bonnie runs into that witch Lucy and asks who she is and what she's doing here. Lucy says she should have known she would run into a Bennett, and Bonnie's surprised, asking how she knows her. And Lucy says, you figure it out. I have no interest in fighting with you. But Bonnie asks her to stop the spell that she put on her friend. And she's like, well then give Katherine the moonstone. And she's like, why are you helping her? And she's like, look, I don't have another choice. Katherine saved my life and now I have to pay up. She goes to leave and then Bonnie grabs her arm and then witchy stuff starts happening and Lucy's like, you have the moonstone on you, don't you? Give it to me. You can trust me. You feel it, don't you? So Katherine and Damon are having more banter and he's fed up, so he pins her against the wall and is about to stake her, but Stefan stops him like, remember, she's linked to Elena.
The second the spell's lifted, I'm gonna drive the stake right through your heart.
God, you're hot. When did you get so hot?
But then Lucy shows up at the moonstone saying that the spell in the room is broken and they're free to leave. But when she hands Katherine the moonstone, she's like, my debt to you is over. Katherine's like, yeah, duh. And when the moonstone is placed in Katherine's hand, she starts choking and she can't breathe. And this is Lucy's doing. And she's like, you should have told me there was another witch here, Katherine, especially a Bennett. And Stefan freaks out because he's worried about Elena, but Lucy says she's fine. The link is broken and she'll heal quickly. Bonnie's with her and she's sorry about her involvement. And at this point, Katherine's passed out. A lot of the time, these vampires really don't stand a chance against these witches. So we then cut to a dead Sarah lying on the floor, and Caroline's trying to explain to Carol Lockwood what's happened, basically saying she got too drunk, she fell over, it was an accident. And she's like, okay, well, you stay here, I'm gonna call the sheriff, she's gonna have to deal with this. So then there's just Tyler with Caroline, and he's freaking out, and he's like, why are you helping me? And she's like, I'm just trying to help you fix a bad situation. You didn't mean to hurt her. And he's like, you don't know what this means though. And she's like, I think I do. Is your wound healed yet? And then he checks and it is, and he's like, What's going on here? Super sus. So as the witch Lucy is leaving, Bonnie intercepts her and asks her how she knows her and how she had that feeling that she could trust her with the stone. And Lucy asks if she's ever felt that feeling before with anyone. And Bonnie says with family, her grams. And then it turns out that like Lucy is like Bonnie's distant relative in some like really convoluted way.
We're related.
We kind of are.
And she thanks Bonnie, saying that meeting her was a wake-up call, that she needs to stop letting vampires control her. And Bonnie's like, please don't leave. I have so many questions. How do I stay out of the middle of it? And Lucy's like, the middle of it is where you actually need to be. You're with the good ones. And then she leaves saying, take care, cuz. Don't worry, you'll see me again soon, which is a bold-faced lie. So then Jeremy shows up and offers Bonnie a ride home. And she's like, when did you get your driver's license? And he's like, I'm not a kid anymore, Bonnie. Okay. We get it, writers. You're trying to introduce something. So then Stefan finds Elena by the lake, checking how she's doing. She said that Bonnie took most of the pain away and she's healing now. He thinks that she should see a doctor. I don't know why no one just gave her vampire blood, but anyway. She asks if Katherine is gone and he says yeah. He goes to caress her face and she stops him, and then he realizes and says Katherine being gone doesn't change anything, does it? And she says she does want to be with him, but she needs to make sure that everyone in her life is safe first, and she needs to feel safe before she can. Which is really mature, to be honest. But at the same time, if Katherine's locked away, what's the issue? Anyway, she leaves and he's clearly very disappointed. So Katherine wakes up in a dark place with the moonstone, and boom, it's the tomb from season 1. Remember the famous old tomb where she was supposed to be but she wasn't? And now she's trapped inside, where Damon's like, this is where you should have been all along. And she's like, you should have just killed me. And he's like, death would be too kind. And he goes to close the stone door, and she's trying to plead to Damon, saying, you need me, Elena's in danger. And he's like, from who? But she won't tell him, and he's like, ugh, you're just lying again. And she goes on saying, why do you think I haven't killed her yet? It's because she's the doppelganger. She needs to be protected. But Damon thinks that he can protect her, so he just continues closing the door. And Katherine just keeps begging like,
Damon, don't. I'll do anything. Please, Damon. You need me. Damon!
But he fully seals the door, and Katherine's just there looking scared for the first time ever this season. Like, she fully done lost, trapped in that tomb, alone in the dark.
You need me!
What I don't understand though is why they left the moonstone with her. Interesting. They couldn't have just pried it from her hand. So then our final scene in this episode is Elena in the car park on the phone to Jeremy, who's saying he's just gonna go to bed. And she's like, don't wait up, I'm about to drive home soon. So she's walking to her car, but then she gets grabbed and kidnapped by someone in a mask. Boom, end of the episode. I think this is very interesting because last season she got kidnapped and that was like one of the mid-season finale. I don't think this is the mid-season finale technically, but it is an interesting, like, suspenseful way for us to end this chapter. So yeah, guys, that is the end of our deep dive and recap of season 2 of the Vampire Diaries part 1. I will come out with part 2 as soon as I can. Make sure you subscribe and have the post notifications bell on so that you will get notified of that. And please, please, please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and leave me a comment and share the video. It really, really helps. I put a lot of effort into these, so I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to check out my scene breakdowns where we actually react to pivotal scenes and storylines throughout the episodes, that's over on my Patreon. I post them after these ones, like they're kind of like a companion series over there. So check out my Patreon, link down below. Shout out to my Queen Bee and Curious Cat patrons, and an extra special shout out to my Butterfly Bestie patrons: Amanda, Ann, Ashley, Audrey, B, Hannah, Hex, Holly, Justice, Kayla, Kaylee, Not Mitch, Renee, Somerset, Tracy, and Trank. If you would like to become a Patreon member, then click the link in my description. There is 3 different tiers to choose from depending on how much bonus content you want. And if you haven't already, follow me on all my social media if you want behind the scenes updates of my YouTube videos and a little bit of my life. And yeah, guys, that's it for me in this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next video. And as always, I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you're in the world. Bye.